I'd like to call this meeting to order, please. The first item in the agenda is to go into closed meeting. Do I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
Am I supposed to do that first?
Yeah. You can do it either way.
All right.
Just read in the purpose.
Roll call, please.
Ms. Perkins?
Aye.
Mr. Brown?
Aye.
Ms. Biggs?
Aye.
Mr. Tuck?
Aye.
Mr. Gabriel?
Aye.
Chair
I need to
Aye.
add.
6 ayes.
And the purpose of the closed meeting is section 2. Oh, first we have an addendum to the closed meeting to add discussion, consideration, or interviews of prospective candidates for employment, assignment, appointment, promotion, performance, demotion, salary, disciplining, or registration, resignation of specific officers, and that's for Parks and Rec. Do I need to
So moved.
Second.
move and seconded? Roll call, please.
Mr. Gabriel?
Aye.
Mr. Tuck?
Aye.
Ms. Biggs?
Aye.
Mr. Brown?
Aye.
Ms. Perkins?
Aye.
Chair Paulides?
Aye.
6 ayes.
And then we have section 2.2-3711, discussion or consideration of acquisition of real property for public purpose or the disposition of publicly held property, where discussion in an open meeting would adversely affect the bargaining position or negotiation strategy of the public body. And the first item on that is the old Elliston Lafayette Elementary School site, the former Plum Creek Greenbox site, and former Texas Hollow Road Park. And dash 1 is discussion, consideration, or interview of prospective candidates for employment, assignment, appointment, promotion, performance, demotion, salaries, disciplining, or resignation of specific officers, appointees, or employees of any public body. And that will be for the Economic Development Authority and the Planning Commission. We're now in a closed meeting.
Yeah.
And Parks and Rec. I'd like to call the meeting back to order, please. The first item on the agenda is to go out of closed meeting. Do I have a motion, please?
So moved. Second.
Moved and seconded. Roll call, please.
Mr. Brown?
Aye.
Ms. Biggs?
Aye.
Mr. Tuck?
Aye.
Mr. Gabriel?
Aye. Aye.
Chair Paulides?
Aye.
5 ayes.
The next item on the agenda is certification of closed meeting. Whereas the Board of Supervisors of Montgomery County has convened a closed meeting on this date pursuant to an affirmative recorded vote in accordance with the provisions of the Virginia Freedom of Information Act, and whereas Section 2.2-3711 of the Code of Virginia requires certification by the Board if such closed meeting was conducted in conformity with Virginia law. Now therefore be it resolved that the Board of Supervisors of Montgomery County, Virginia hereby certifies that to the best of each member's knowledge, only public business matters lawfully exempted from the open meeting requirements by Virginia law were discussed in the closed meeting to which this certification resolution applies, and only such public business matters as were identified in the motion convening the closed meeting were heard, discussed, or considered by the board. Do I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Roll call, please.
Ms. Biggs?
Aye.
Mr. Tuck?
Aye.
Mr. Gabriel?
Aye.
Ms. Perkins?
Aye.
Mr. Brown?
Aye.
Chair Paulides?
Aye.
6 ayes.
And the next item on the agenda is our invocation. If we'll take a moment of silence, please, and stand and think of the matters that are before us today. And following that, we'll have the Pledge of Allegiance led by Mr. Meadows.
Let us pledge, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much.
And Mr. Creed is not with us this evening. He's got a little bit of the crud.
It's been going around.
It's going around pretty good, I guess. The next item is a public hearing. It's a joint with VDOT and the Board of Supervisors. The following joint public hearing was advertised pursuant to law in the Berg section of the Roanoke Times on March 31st, April 6th, and April 7th, and in the News Messenger on March 26th. And we have Mr. Clark here to lead us on this. Well, this is on our public hearing from the Department of Transportation, the 6-year plan. Thank you.
Yes, good evening. This is the secondary road 6-year plan public hearing. Is required by law for VDOT to appear before the board and go through a public hearing to decide, or to take comments at least, on how to spend allocation for secondary road construction. This is construction allocation for roads numbered 600 and above. The past few years, we haven't had a whole lot to have a public hearing about. The allocations have gone from over $2 to $3 million down to about $108,000, and we were in the process of cutting roads in the plan, and trying to finish out what money was left over on some projects. Some good news I have is that it looks like we will have some more coming in the later years of the plan. This next year, FY, or the fiscal year 13-14, it's going to be about the same in the $100,000 range, but according to projections, I think for the new transportation plan that was passed, towards the end of the last 3 years of the plan, you'll be getting, the allocation will go upwards of over $500,000 a year, which is still not anywhere near what it was before, but it's a whole lot more than has been in the past. So with that, I think we can add some roads to the plan. They won't be addressed or worked on until the last years of the plan, 2016, 17, 18, in those years. We still need to add them to the plan. What I've presented to you is a draft plan that I will go through. This is just something to work off of, and I simply put some roads in there that the board has been passing in their resolution over the last few years, and I have been removed from the plan because we didn't have enough money to do them. The last few years, all we've had in the plan was Sydney Church Road and Mount Pleasant Road, and Piney Woods Road, which is an unpaved road, but that was using some federal money that you were required to put on a federal eligible project several years ago. This can be changed. This is just something to start off with. You don't have to put these. What I did is I put Craig's Creek Road, Yellow Sulphur Road, which were roads that were taken out before. In fact, we're working on Craig's Creek Road. Actually, we put Craig's Creek Road in last year because we had done so much with revenue sharing that to actually service treat it cost so little that we could put it back in the plan and not affect any of the other projects. So Craig's Creek was in there before. What I've added was Yellow Sulphur. Doing a section beyond what your revenue sharing project, which has gone to advertisement, will take care of. And then I've gone ahead and put Mount Pleasant on there, which is the part from the top of the mountain down to where the other project ends. Again, those don't have to be the ones you add. You will probably have to add a couple, but this is just something to start off with, to present and go to public hearing with. So that all said, I'm going to go through from the top to the bottom of these roads. I've sort of just explained the end. I believe you have this handout. What I call priority 0 is various countywide items. These are things that need to be charged to the construction budget, signs, secondary guardrail, little things that are maybe beyond maintenance. We have some funds that we can put in there. Next priority is Mount Pleasant Road. It starts where we finished a project a couple of years ago at the bridge, and takes it past Lavender Road, about to the foot of the mountain part. It goes through that flat part by the creek there. That's that priority 1. Priority 2 is Sydney Church Road. That's paving and unpaved roads. City Church Road goes between Fairview Church and Camp Carriesbrook. Priority 3 is Piney Woods Road. That's in the process of design and some other engineering processes right now. So that's on its way. I don't know the ad date. Probably it's, I don't know, 2016 or something like that. I don't have that with me right here. But there has been some work on that. In fact, the last few days I was driving through there and we've had some of our geology crew out there doing some drilling. Priority 4 is Mount Pleasant Road. This is the bridge that will connect that's between the two unpaved road projects. That's being done by our bridge office. It's not taking any of your secondary money to do that, but I put it in the 6-year plan just to keep it in the plan. Make sure our bridge office knows that that's a priority to get that. It's a 1-lane bridge, a very narrow bridge. Priority 5, Craigs Creek Road. We've done the widening and the drainage for that. We've done a mile or so of surface treatment already, starting at the Craig County line. This spring and summer, we should finish up that surface treatment of that. Priority 6, Yellow Sulphur Road. In this draft plan, I have it starting from the northern end, the Blacksburg end, I guess if you want, and going about a mile. It would take probably another mile to finish the whole thing. We could change those limits if you'd like to go ahead and put the whole thing in there, but I think it should be probably broken up into 2 projects, depending on how we do it. And then priority 7 is Mount Pleasant Road, and that's the mountain part, apart from sort of the east end of Christiansburg, north end of Christiansburg, down to 675 Split Railroad. That's the draft plan. We will take public comment and change. We can change any of those last 2, really. The others are pretty much are set. Actually, Sydney Church is not set. We haven't done a lot of work on Sydney Church Road. The only ones you really can't delete from the plan, because there's too much already gone into it, is Piney Woods and Craigs Creek. The rest we can change however the board wants. I'd like to point out this is also a public hearing to hear perhaps any comment on rural additions. Rural addition is where we take a private road and you can bring it into this VDOT system of state-maintained roads, build it. They typically have to be widened, drainage work done, and some kind of hard surface put on there. You can take 5% of your construction allocation and put towards rural additions. So this is also a form to hear from the public any rural addition requests. That's all I have. And if the board has any questions, we'll take public comment.
In the rural addition areas, would the VDOT be buying the right of way, or would the citizens longer have to donate the right of way? Okay, they donate the right of way.
Yes.
Okay. What about if it's any utility poles or any wires and things up through that part that you need? Who puts the bill to move them?
I believe that can be charged to the project. The county is supposed to present to VDOT a package ready to go, all easements, right of way, everything like that taken care of, so that we can just. But we've in the past helped the county if they need to get right of way, especially in showing the residents what might have to be done, where any improvements would be made.
One follow-up question, and I'm just asking these for the benefit of whoever wants to speak on a rural addition. Is it 40 feet or 50 feet of right-of-way, that you guys like to take in as a rural addition into the road system?
We usually get 40 feet.
You can get 40 feet.
Yeah.
Okay.
Anybody else have any questions? Thank you, David. At this time, we have 3 people signed up to speak at this public hearing. If you'll want to call your name, come forward and give your name and address, and you'll have 5 minutes to speak. And the first person is David Music.
Good evening. My name is David Music. I live on Blue Springs Road, 5940 Blue Springs Road, Hiawassee, Virginia. I'm here to bring the full road conditions of Blue Springs Road to the board. In September of 2012, I turned in a petition to VDOT that 44 people signed that travel the road. Much of the residents have eroding ditch lines, gravel washing into their fields, and drain pipes stopped up. We don't understand why we keep getting neglected. The county keeps paving bits and pieces of the road to satisfy other taxpayers and neglecting the rest of us. If they pave 1.5 miles from the intersection of 620, continues on State Route 710 to the end of Blue Springs, it would satisfy 18 more households. If they would only pave 0.5 miles to Phillips Road, which takes you to the top of the hill, it would satisfy 9 households, which is also takes you to the end of the bus route. And I'll also add, there's 2 existing work orders that has been open for months. Nothing has been done yet. But that would also take care of the 2 work orders within that 0.15 mile. So I guess that's basically what I'm proposing this evening is to continue on where the surface treated was left off back in, I think it was September, on to the top of the hill to the end of the bus route, and that would take care of the 2 work orders also.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Music.
Any questions?
Moving on at this time.
Thank you.
We'll get back to you. The next speaker is Mark Muse.
So it's Mark Muscar. I
I'm
live
sorry.
on 980 Cornstalk Road off of Rustic Ridge. I am here to discuss the Rural Additions program. I bought some land and built my home back in '05. At that point, there were some discussions of the Rural Additions program. We were on the list in '06, '07, and I believe the 10th position. Obviously, since then, there hasn't been much money available to work on the program. So I know that things are starting to be revisited, and there may be some money available in the future. So I'd like to have some consideration to be, moved up the list, if not to the top. We have about 13 households that utilize Cornstalk Road on a daily basis. The entire road is a little over a mile long. I think in the '06, '07 time period, I think that proposal was for 6/10 to a mile, and I know that price tag was rather high. We're not necessarily, we'd like to get whatever we can get. If it's 1/10 of a mile, if it's 1/4 of a mile, if it's 1/2 a mile, any little bit will help ease the cost of keeping up a private road. We do have some children on the road. I am speaking on behalf of some other Cornstalk members. Yeah, so we're just wanting to get moved up on the list if we can, and it's beautiful out there, and it's a close area to Roanoke, but the road system is certainly a detriment to that area. I guess that's about it.
All right, thank you, Mr. Muscar.
Thank you.
And the next speaker will be Melissa Jeffords.
I'm Melissa Jeffords. I live on 1176 Fleet Drive. I've appeared before y'all before about our road. We have the petition signed. However, we are missing some. Mostly, some of it's our fault because my mother got sepsis and we had to go to South Carolina. Two live out of town, one in Floyd and one in Roanoke. They're not answering telephone calls, and we don't have an address. One of them, the bank owns it. I don't know how to get a bank to sign a petition. Was I supposed to try? I mean, honestly, because I don't know. And the church and the gentleman at the end of the road don't want it paved. They've got their section paved, and they're afraid you'll take their property and their parking lot when you pave it. So what we're asking is, if it's possible, could you pave up to there? It's, what, about 2/10 of a mile? And that would help the rest of us. We did get some gravel donated for Miss Gail to be able to get in and out and have egress and ingress. However, it's still a bad hump down, and it's still a bad road. If, like we had snow, we have rain again, they're not going to be able to travel on that deep gravel because it is about this thick in gravel, and it will be messy. Not everyone's having it. We're just asking for you to pave it to the end of the church. It'll be easier for 911. We do have school children. Truthfully, they are mine. But we do have school children walking on that. And my husband and I purchased an own, which is why we didn't sign it. We got the owners that we're buying it from to sign it. But we did add in our purchase own agreement that we did agree to it. So there'll be no argument there later on. So, any questions? Did I miss anything? Okay. What do I do?
Thank you very much. There's nobody else signed up for this public hearing. If there is anybody else in the audience who would like to come and address the board, please step forward and say your name and address, please.
This is not to do with the public hearing. This is just a regular public address for anyone?
No, this is just public hearing,
Okay,
so if you
I
wait.
apologize.
Okay, all right. Anybody else?
I did forget to mention one thing. We're not looking for paved road system. I just want to make that clear, just the state to take it over. It'd be gravel, it'd be fine. And also, there are have several acres and would be certainly willing, I know I would be, to provide areas for hauling dirt and stumps and to keep that cost down of hauling that material out of there. If the state was to take it over, we can provide areas for those, for the, any extra dirt or stumps to be removed.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Could I ask a question of David, please? When we take over a road, does it have to come to VDOT standards, or can we take it over with the gravel and
Yeah, no,
whatnot?
generally it has to be to be, it can be to a lower standard, but it's got to be, it's got to have the width and the surface on it. We don't
Yeah.
need any more unpaved roads. And just to clarify, the woman that spoke about Fleck Drive, that's also a rural addition request. That's not
Yes, okay,
currently
she's got that on there.
unpaved road. That would be a new addition. We've taken in parts of Fleck, but she's speaking about the last part that's still a private section road.
Okay, thank you. Is there anybody else who'd like to address the board on this matter? Seeing no one, we'll close this public hearing. Thank you all very much.
One other thing, just to clarify what will happen next. We've had public comment, and if the board would like to put together a group to review some of this with county staff, be glad to do that. We'll try to come up with a priority list that the board will pass. The board has to pass a resolution approving a priority list with specific roads on there. There's no rush in doing that in the next month, certainly maybe by June or something like that. So I'll be in touch with you all.
Jim, Dave, would you mind talking to some of the folks and explaining that they are the ones who have to bring the road up to at least a standard that the state would accept? If you've got a minute or two to talk with them.
Sure, but actually what it is you can use your secondary construction money to bring that road up to standard.
All right, so the county.
Yes.
Can
Can you use your secondary construction allocation to bring up a private road to current state standards?
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. Now you can't use, it's not a lot. You can only take 5% of your secondary construction allocation and put towards what they call rural addition. 95% of your money has to go to roads that are currently the state roads. But you can take 5% of your money and take a private road, bring it to state standard, and then we'll accept it for maintenance.
And 5%
So
of
it is using VDOT
200,000 is
money.
10.
It's $10,000 is not going to,
No, it's not a lot,
not
no.
going to touch your,
No, and even at the end of this plan, you're getting 800,000, that's what, 40,000. So it's still not a
I'm a
whole
little
lot.
bit familiar with having some of the roads taken over. My parents developed a subdivision, and so that's why I was thinking that some of these folks are going to need to hear that, just simply because
Yeah.
it's not a reality necessarily.
And see, it's the similar situation to a subdivision, except in that case, they're not using rural addition funds. We're taking what we call a no-cost rural addition. It's basically what that is. And that's a road that's already been off state standards. We just take it over.
Right.
But most of them aren't. Most of them are gravel roads. They're narrow. They don't have the drainage, so they need a lot of work before we'll bring them in. And you can use some of your second. Now, the county already has, I believe, 200 and some thousand, is that right, in your rural addition fund. So you've got some sitting there. That's not a lot. That doesn't get you very far. 200,000.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I have,
All right.
I just wondered, were you familiar with the reference to 2 work orders on Blue Spring Road? I just wondered if you knew what those were.
I don't know in particular what they are. I'm
Okay.
sure we're still doing a whole lot of cleanup work from the the storms that put the flooding and the snow that put trees everywhere and gravel in just about every ditch and drain pipe we have. So.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else?
Mr. Chair, I was just going to say what we'll do, working with Steve in planning, is get some information together based on what we've heard tonight, and then we'll bring some thoughts back to the board for your direction. So certainly appreciate the citizens being here tonight, too. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, the next item is public address. And I have nobody signed up for this public address, but if you would please come forward and state your name and address, and you'll have 5 minutes.
Good evening, Board. My name is Sherry Blevins. I'm 240 Virginia Drive, Christiansburg. I'm here to address the Board on the safety issues at Falling Branch Elementary School in relation to the close proximity across the street of the park and ride. As you may well be aware of, within the last 3 years, there have been over 50 incidents directly at the school with trespassers from patrons from the park and ride. 22 times, Christiansburg Police Department has responded to the school as a result of belligerent patrons or people refusing to leave, or just the fact of a security issue. With those things coming to public awareness back in February, the Town Council of Christiansburg called a special town meeting where they funded a police officer for 3 weeks to be on the campus to handle any immediate situations, as all stakeholders would be contacted to find some type of solution, to start open lines of communication to make sure everybody was aware of the problems. Since then, the town council has twice extended the police officer, and currently it's extended for another 30 days until about May 5th. Since then, most ACAP holders have been responsive. The school board, I've spoke twice at the school board, and they have implemented or in the process of implementing safeguards at Falling Branch Elementary School. In addition, the town has conducted meetings with, I do believe, board members have attended as well. They've also added signage. So what we're here today for on behalf of the families of Falling Branch Elementary School is to ask the board if they will help, first of all, officially support the relocation of the park and ride. Until it is removed, it will be a potential threat to the school. Until we can control the access of who enters that school from the front doors, there will continue to be issues of safeguard. I know VDOT has been responsive, and they are placing a permanent fence around enclosing the lot. I know they have been responsive with meeting and their willingness, and they're sensitive, but until the park and ride can be removed, it will continue to be a threat. Asking, first of all, for the board to support us officially, making sure that you're meeting with all stakeholders and understand the urgency, the safety in our children should come first. Secondly, to help fund a police officer on that campus until the end of the school year, until we can look future into next year, and maybe putting that as a budget line item as a necessity or a need. at the school until the threat can be removed. And just to find a way to develop with the stakeholders and VDOTs of a place that could be more suitable to the value and benefits of public and mass transportation by also providing amenities to the patrons. There are no amenities such as food, lodging, shopping. There's a small portable toilet and a small shelter at that facility. There are no other amenities. By placing it someplace or developing or working with someplace more suitable in the county, it also could provide revenue for this county as well, without impacting or sacrificing or risking the jeopardy of its surrounding neighbors and community. And so we're just here asking again for your support and also to fund. I know the school year ends May 31st. Town Council will supply or fund about, I do believe it's May 5th. I may be a day or two off there, but for the next 30 days they'll have a police officer. And these came upon the prior incidents and from Chief Sisson's recommendation that until the front doors can be secured and until there will always be a potential threat with the patrons coming over there from the park and ride. And so we just ask for your support to officially continue to work with VDOT on long-term goals of finding a better location that's more suitable and can accomplish everyone's needs while keeping our community safe. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, is there anybody else in the audience who would like to address the board?
Good evening, everybody. I'm Jack Selfowitz. I live on High Rock Hill Road down in Pilot. I see on your work session coming up, you're going to be discussing the 2013-2014 budget. And I would like to remind you that the major tax increase last year has resulted in your budget overview, which you guys produced, showing an increase of $4.5 million if left as you proposed with the 2-cent increase. If you remove the 2-cent increase, it just deletes $1.4 million and still brings you over $3 million of an increase. That should be enough for everybody to get the different projects done. You still have not done anything in regards to the animal shelter. You've taken $1 million, set it aside, haven't done a thing, and our little cats and dogs are still sitting in the same dilapidated conditions they were a year ago as we sat here. If you're not going to physically start the project, then please take that $1 million and use that for your other budget projects, or else start that project and let's get down the path. Between that and all our reserve funds, we can get that animal shelter up and done. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jack. Is there anybody else who would like to speak at the public address? Seeing no one, we will close this public address.
We do
some
have
addendums.
we do have one addendum this evening.
Yeah,
Yes, sir.
we do have one addendum this evening. A resolution scheduling a public hearing on the Board of Supervisors' intent to dispose of county-owned properties. And that would be the old Ellison Lafayette School site, former Plum Creek Greenbox site, and former Texas Hollow Park. Do I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Any discussion?
Yeah,
Just to be clear, that'll be added to consent.
it'll be added to consent.
It will be added to consent agenda, yeah? Okay. All right,
So we're voting on adding it to the consent agenda.
yeah. So I don't need a roll call on it. Roll call.
Ms. Purvis?
Aye.
Mr. Brown?
Aye.
Ms. Biggs?
Aye.
Mr. Tuck?
Aye.
Mr. Gabriel?
Aye.
Chair Paulettis?
Aye.
6 ayes.
All right, and the next item is the consent agenda.
Mr. Chairman, there's just one minor error in the minutes. It said court, C-O-R-T hall, and it needs to be court hall. And so that would be the only addendum to the minutes, I think, from the last meeting. He was one, or not the last meeting.
Minutes.
All right. Make that change.
Make that change.
Roll call, please.
Okay.
Do we need a
I need a motion.
I guess I'd make that motion.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I'll second it.
Motion and seconded. Roll call, please.
Okay. Ms. Biggs?
Aye.
Mr. Tuck?
Aye.
Mr. Gabriel?
Aye.
Ms. Perkins?
Aye.
Mr. Brown?
Aye.
Chair Willis?
Aye.
6 ayes.
Okay. Now we'll move on to the consent agenda as amended. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded.
We just
Roll
did
call,
that.
please.
I think we already,
Did we already do it that?
yeah, when Matt's motion did that.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So already done.
Yep.
All right.
Yeah.
I get confused sometimes.
Never mind.
We don't do this too often.
Sorry, I just saw it. I guess I should have pointed it out.
That's all right.
No problem. Whole business.
All right, the next item is old business. And it's an ordinance of special use permit for W Sink for the operation of a specialty shop.
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. We have any discussion?
Yeah, I just
Mr.
want to
Gabriel.
thank Mr. Sandy and Mr. Sink. I raised a concern about potential problem of it being a brownfield. Since it was an old gas station, they got back to me and it's all clear. So I just want to thank them for that.
Steve sent that out today. Thank you, Steve.
Any other discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Tuck?
Aye.
Mr. Gabriel?
Aye.
Ms. Perkins?
Aye.
Mr. Brown?
Aye.
Ms. Biggs?
Aye.
Chair Willis?
Aye.
6 ayes.
And the next item is to go into work session. Do I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Roll call, please.
Mr. Gabriel?
Aye.
Ms. Perkins?
Aye.
Mr. Brown?
Aye.
Ms. Biggs?
Aye.
Mr. Tuck?
Aye.
Chair Willis?
Aye.
6 ayes.
And the first item is the solid waste regulations and solid waste sites. And Bill?
Just as an introduction to this one, several board members have brought up some concerns recently with some of the regulations with regarding the convenience sites and some of the items that can be disposed of and some changes in some of the regulations. I know there's been some, not necessarily some confusion, but certainly some frustration over that. But wanted one for you to have the opportunity to meet Bill Long this evening. Bill's over our solid waste collection sites and does an excellent job working with the site attendants, and also does an excellent job working with the folks that have to take our trash once we have collected it. And Bill, I'm going to let you explain a little bit about why some of these regulations have come about and what our ordinance says as far as what we take and don't take, and give the board an opportunity to ask you any questions they may have.
Sure, absolutely. Thank you, Mr. Meadows, and good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I was approached back in October, November of last year by the Montgomery Regional Solid Waste Authority. They informed me that they were implementing a new construction waste manifest. It's basically a one-page document. For anybody disposing of construction waste at the Solid Waste Authority, they must submit a construction waste manifest, and basically this manifest describes where the material came from, what the material was made of, and you must also provide proof that the materials that you are disposing of at the Solid Waste Authority do not have hazardous materials in them, such as, lead or asbestos. So when I was informed of this, I immediately thought of the 10 consolidated waste sites in the county. That's a real genuine concern for the sites. That could be very expensive. Testing, you must test these items if you do not have proof. If an item winds up in the waste stream at the consolidated waste sites, all 10 sites are being visited by numerous residents from different areas of the county. So if an item does wind up in the waste stream at one of the sites, there's a good chance that we will have no idea where that material came from, who disposed of that item, what that material was made of. So chances are, if there is any concern about the item in the waste stream, then the county, there's a good chance that the county would be liable to pay for the expenses to have those items tested, which is a real concern. Another issue with the consolidated waste sites is making sure to be consistent, both as what is being accepted at the sites as well as the information that is being provided to the residents. So coming into the county, coming into my position, I started in May of last year. I've tried to be very black and white with the sites to avoid confusion, both for the site attendants as well as the residents. And this is just an extension of that. Providing gray area could be very costly to the county. It could cost money. I contacted the Solid Waste Authority just the other day to ask, what happens if a material that is submitted is found to be hazardous? And the Solid Waste Authority would not accept it. The items would need to be shipped to North Carolina at a landfill out of state, which is an additional concern on top of just the testing. If the county was to pay for the testing of an item that wound up in our waste stream, then you also have to look at the possibility of shipping those items out of state, and you're looking into a whole nother, situation there. So basically what I have done is that, there is an ordinance in place. The county has an ordinance. It's been in the books for quite some time, but unfortunately, before the situation with the solid waste manifest, that was not being enforced at the consolidated waste sites. Construction waste was allowed to be taken in. So basically, my approach is nothing new. I'm just enforcing what the county has in the books by not accepting the construction waste at the sites. I do understand the frustration from the county residents when, for a period of time, heaven only knows what period of time, these items were accepted at the sites. There was very little oversight, lax enforcement. So for me to come in and start enforcing what wasn't enforced in the past, I do understand the frustration from the county residents. But the fact of the matter is I'm not doing something that shouldn't have been done already. I think, you can't fault the Solid Waste Authority for this. To increase knowledge, to improve safety, I think is a good thing. But it really did set in motion things here at the county, since all of our items wind up at the Solid Waste Authority. And there's just a real genuine concern of having these items in our waste stream. And from my knowledge, these sites are paid through tax dollars. And if we wind up with a bunch of fees to test the items and to ship the items out of state with regulations and whatnot, this could be a real problem for the county as well as the residents, because those fees could add up very quickly. So I hope that kind of explains a little bit about the approach to this, why we've gone this direction. And really, it was the manifest that really kind of jump-started this to go back and enforce what should have been enforced all along, but there was just, lax enforcement, in the past, and we're just basically going back to the way things should be, with the added importance, now with this construction waste.
Mr. Brown?
For the benefit of our citizens who may be watching this at home or watching it later, could you give us an example that maybe would come from a homeowner what construction waste is? I mean, is it a small piece of sheetrock, or is it a little piece of pressure-treated wood or is it a pickup truck load, or what?
Yes, sir, and that is one of the problems is there are so many construction materials out there, and, it's actually discussed, do we take a small amount? Well, if we do take a small amount, how would you classify a small amount? First, let's say a garbage can's worth. If somebody brought a garbage can worth of debris into the site that was taken from their home. Well, a garbage can full of bricks may not be a big deal, but a garbage can full of potentially hazardous shingles would put a whole new twist on that item with the concern there. And that is one of the issues is that how do you pinpoint exactly what would be classified as construction debris, what would not be classified as construction debris, and The county's ordinance, section 9.1-36, does have a breakdown of materials that would be classified as construction waste, and then there is also a definition in section 9.1-2 that basically gives a definition of what is classified as construction waste. It could be anywhere from glass, pipes, concrete, metal and plastics, metals and plastics that are part of the materials of construction. That would include such items as asbestos. So you're really, and that kind of goes back to the whole being black and white. When you open that gray area, then you have that risk of having that item wind up in the waste stream, having the site attendant make a decision on their own, okay, is this hazardous, is this not hazardous, when in fact it could be. So keeping things black and white is just really kind of keeping things out of the waste stream to avoid confusion, to avoid frustration, and to avoid anger from the residents as well as the site attendants. So it is a very tough thing to determine what is exactly construction waste, because there's so many. And I even had site attendants approach me and say, listen, can you come up with a list of what would be classified as construction waste? Well, that would be a never-ending list of what exactly, building materials and hardware and whatnot that may be out there floating around that might come out of someone's home.
So Bill, let me ask this. If I'm doing some work around the house and I've got a 5-gallon bucket full of stuff, what am I supposed to do with it?
You would take that item to the Solid Waste Authority and fill out the manifest that they require.
So any county citizen can go to the Solid Waste Authority?
Absolutely, absolutely. Okay. Yes, and they would just take those items over there, they would fill out the manifest, they would provide that information that we would have no idea if it wound up in an open top container at one of the sites. Because we would not have the labels. We would have no idea what address that material came from. So you're really just accepting that item, you're really opening the door to what do we have here and what do we do to dispose of it. So there is a concern there.
The Solid Waste Authority closes at noon on Saturdays and it's not open on Sundays, correct?
That is correct, and that is something that I've spoken to.
They close at 4:30 or 5 on the weekdays?
I believe it's 4 o'clock during the weekdays, and it's 12 o'clock on the weekends.
Yeah, so if you work, you've only got a narrow window on Saturdays to be able to haul your garbage off.
Yes, sir, and I have spoken to the Solid Waste Authority about that.
And you come over to the county to get that certification?
No.
You don't come to the county building? Okay, because the contractor had contacted me and they thought they had to come over here to get their
No,
permit.
that's the reason I asked that question. If you own the stuff and you go to the Solid Waste Authority, you fill out the manifest at the Solid Waste Authority. And I think that's a key point. One of the things that we've heard from citizens is, well, it's terribly inconvenient. And we certainly understand the convenience part of it, to be sure. But the concern that I had, and the reason that I asked Bill to come, in addition to the concerns you had, is because I've heard several folks say, well, can't you just take it? Can't you just set a dumpster aside for all this stuff, put it in there? Well, when that dumpster full of those items goes to the Solid Waste Authority, there's going to be a whole lot of testing and a whole lot of fees that all our taxpayers are going to have to pay for.
Absolutely, and the way we kind of approach the solid waste, or not the solid, the consolidated waste sites, is we look at it as household trash and household recycling. I do understand that, the county doesn't have, like the town of Blacksburg would, or the town of Christiansburg, they don't, the county doesn't have a spring cleanup opportunity to leave those items at the curb, like other locations would. But the fact of the matter is that we kind of approach it as basic trash, basic recycling, and, you wouldn't put construction waste. I live in the town of Blacksburg, and I wouldn't put construction waste on the curb on Friday with my normal trash. They're not going to accept it. Now, I do understand that we do have that opportunity in the spring and fall to hold on to those items and dispose of it, but, curbside service would not accept those items, and basically that's kind of our approach to the sites too, and the way that they're structured is your traditional household trash and recycling, and getting into construction waste, you're kind of going beyond that normal what we classify as normal collection of household, traditional trash and recycling that you would find in a household.
Well, so if I'm in the town of Blacksburg, because they're part of the consolidated, they're taking their garbage to the site as well, correct?
Yes.
And so they're filling out a form. If I've got a piece of carpet that I'm throwing away, I'm filling out a form during that spring cleanup and attaching that to that piece of carpet.
Honestly, sir, I'm not quite sure how the town of Blacksburg has implemented.
They won't take construction.
So even on their spring cleanup, they won't take a piece of carpet.
No, they will not take construction. They will take carpet.
All right, so will they take a door? So if I replace a door?
I've seen doors, but I don't know if they take.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure
I
the town of
think it
Blacksburg is
depends.
implementing that.
I think it
And
depends.
so what my concern is, and somebody who's, and all of us have been residents here for a while, but I remember when I was a kid where people would just dump in the hollow. And if they can't go to some place that's convenient, they will find somebody else's piece of property and they will dump what they've got.
Yeah.
And so my concern is, okay, we're avoiding one, but we've got trash being dumped at other locations and we're having another problem. And so I guess, how can we work through listing, like a 2x4? Well, that's a construction piece of material, but it's a piece of wood that it's not asbestos. But the other thing is, I'm hearing residents, they're just saying they're putting their stuff in a black plastic bag, covering it up and putting it in the...
Yeah, and that is right. And we can't open bags of trash. I mean, we can't do that. So people are able to get through that. But one thing I must say is since we've cut back on the construction waste and eliminated the construction waste, we're honestly not seeing illegal dumping locations. At least not that I'm aware of. Like we feared early on. That may happen. That may at some point. We may be seeing that, but as of now, from my understanding, we're not seeing a whole lot of illegal dumping occurring as of now.
Let me address that a little bit. I've been on the board long enough to remember when these solid waste sites became available, and we got away from the green boxes. It's been one of the best things this county's done, and many residents will tell you that. I live on a dirt road. I have streams running along the road through my property. Prior to those sites, we were having washing machines and dryers and stoves and roof material and anything you could find running on our creek. Okay? I don't think I've seen one piece of trash like that in probably the last 10 years.
Excellent. And we do accept white goods and tires at the sites.
I know that, but we also had shingles and things of that nature getting thrown out of the back of a truck. So, we have to be careful that this doesn't start happening again, because you have the possibility of getting this stuff into water sources and things of that nature when they start pitching it again, if they do. And I don't know which is more dangerous. Having it in a safe solid waste authority site or having it thrown in somebody's creek. We got to be careful. And I understand everything you're saying, and I agree that we have a problem and we need to address it. But I do a lot of, fortunately I can burn my wood. I don't have to take that down because I live on a farm, So we have that ability there. But we still have things like old roofs that we take off, old tin roofs. There's no asbestos, or of course there could be lead paint on them, I guess. But you have all that stuff going. Is there a fee to go down there and get a permit to take it to the solid waste authority?
There are fees over there. They are very small, from my understanding. I don't exactly
Even with all the paperwork now and everything, that's not changed?
No, not that I'm aware of.
Okay.
Just the manifest describing your material and providing proof that it's not hazardous.
I think the other thing has been addressed with the time and the hours people can do it too.
So if somebody has something and you don't know really what it is, how do you fill out that it's not bad? I mean, how do you do that?
That's why you have to provide labeling.
But what if you are bringing something, I don't know, it sounds like to me that might be an issue too, like if people have things and they're not sure if what's in them is good or bad. Something old doesn't have a label. I don't know. But the other thing it sounds like we need to do, and I don't know, maybe I'm out in left field or something, but it seems like to me the whole problem is making things easier for the citizens that we serve, okay? And it seems like there's a problem if we're not going to provide any kind of way to do it, then we've got to work with the Solid Waste Authority to do something. So it sounds like, and Mr. Creed is on that authority, I don't know exactly what could be done, but coming from our locality, maybe, I don't know if this is a problem with the towns or whatever, but something needs to be done to make it so that it's not such a hard thing to do. It's not such a hard thing to do, and this paperwork sounds like, I mean, I would think I would just sort of be like, well, I don't know where the door came from. It doesn't have a label on it. How do I know if it has something in it? I don't know when it was built. I don't have any idea.
That's
So
when you
then-
would have to send it off and test it to
And
provide
then who
that.
has to pay for that? The citizen?
The citizen would have to. If not, then the county would, if it
Right,
winds up in
and
our waste
so it
stream.
just seems like we need to be doing something to make it easier. I don't know. That's just my personal opinion.
Let me jump on that a little bit.
Mr. Gabriel had a question.
go ahead.
Quick.
Yeah, I just had a couple, well, one question and one comment. I mean, I think it seems like there's consensus on the board. Perhaps we can ask Mr. Creed to go to the Solid Waste Authority and talk to them about extending their hours, what would be necessary to do that. Mr. Tuck makes a very good point about, if they're only open till noon on Saturday, I mean, they're not really helping anything out. I mean, they need to be
I
open.
agree wholeheartedly.
Pardon?
I agree wholeheartedly.
Yeah.
I've tried to push that. I mean, you have homeowners working on the weekends, you have contractors working on the weekends, and to expect them to hold on to those items through the weekend and go back on Monday morning, I find that to be very unrealistic.
Yeah, and so I would hope that maybe we can direct the board to get that information to Mr. Creed and have him push at the Solid Waste Authority to make sure that happens. At least there's consensus. I hope there's consensus here. The other question I had is about the testing and the issues. Is who requires this type of testing for hazardous material?
The Solid Waste Authority does.
The Solid Waste Authority. What's the authority behind that?
That would be the New River Resource Authority.
Okay.
Over in Radford.
Okay, and then what happens if the county's found to be in violation, that they dispose of something hazardous in place that they're not?
From my understanding, if an item is found to be hazardous through testing, that
Yeah.
the Solid Waste Authority would not accept that item, and they would work with that person to get those items in touch with a location, some sort of landfill in North Carolina, so it would actually wind up having to go out of state.
Okay, so
And from my understanding, the Solid Waste Authority, at least by what was told to me, they would work with that individual or business or whatever to get those items sent to the
now,
appropriate
if something
location.
is dumped, however, and it's found to be, so we can't find out who it is, and I assume the county has to take the responsibility for that, for the cost of shipping that item to the landfill in North Carolina.
Yes, sir.
Is that correct?
That is correct.
And do you have any sense about how much money?
I would have no idea.
You have no idea.
I sure don't.
Okay.
But I would think through regulations and shipping of hazardous items,
It's not cheap.
It's probably not cheap.
Probably not cheap.
Yes.
So I understand like the concerns that are being voiced here. I mean, there's a solution to this, right? If we want to make it easier for the, people, we got to pay for it. Like you got to pay for it. Like that's it's pretty simple in that way. And if we want to devote the resources to pay for this, then that solves the problem. And if we don't, then we got to stop complaining about it, and we got to make sure that our citizens understand that these are the consequences. And then we're going to pay the fines when they do that.
I'm just curious, Pulaski in this as well?
Excuse me?
Who else in the authority?
That would be Montgomery County, the town of Blacksburg, and the town of Christiansburg.
So Pulaski, they're independent, correct?
Is from my understanding, yes, sir.
Yes.
And you look at the authority, so I want to take a step back. You're saying that every piece of construction material must be labeled and tested before it goes into even that?
No, I think it comes down to potentially hazardous items need to be provided with a label
so
of
let's
some
go
sort of
with-
proof of
let's
what
go
the
with
material is
that.
made of.
Is a 2x4 is not a potentially hazardous piece of material. A door is not a potentially hazardous piece of material.
What if there's some sort of adhesive that was used that
If it was treated.
So we want to spend $5 million in testing every single door that every one of our citizens wants to bring in there?
Well, I think that the questions would be raised by the Solid Waste Authority if there was an item that came in that might be potentially hazardous.
So let's just put, on 2 different occasions back before we had these sites, we've had people dump shingles on our property, okay? So, or Jim's piece of property. So let's say they dump, the old siding is asbestos, and so they dump that on Jim's piece of property, okay? Now Jim's responsible for it because it's on his property, right?
Yes, sir, I would imagine so.
So now he's going to be shipping it and paying for it as a citizen
I would imagine
to
so.
North Carolina.
I would imagine so, if it was found to be hazardous.
Thank you.
I think as a county, speaking for myself, I'm happy for the county to pay for it. I would like for Mr. Tuck to suggest raising our taxes so we could afford to pay for it.
Well,
No, the only thing I was thinking
a couple
about.
of things that, if you don't mind me responding, Mr. Gabriel. I understand that you might want to just continue to raise taxes, but I believe that you need to operate in a practical and common sense type of way rather than simply looking at a book and going by the regulations every single time. If we went through life and we went through every single regulation and lived our lives through every single regulation, we wouldn't be sneezing without violating the federal code by spreading
Are you suggesting we break the law?
No.
People break the law and regulations.
We're
They
currently
don't
just
even
following
know
the
they're
ordinance
there.
that's in place. That's all. This is basically our guideline. If it's listed here, we don't accept it.
Doesn't Montgomery County Solid Waste have a once a year or twice a year collection of hazardous
Yeah.
materials?
They do is coming up in May.
Yeah, one
May
in,
11th, I believe.
one in May, and then I know they have one in the fall sometimes.
The New River Resource Authority has 2 events. They're in the A months, if that makes any sense. They have one in April and they have one in August. One is usually over at Pulaski High School, one is over at Bradford High School. But from my understanding, it's open to any residents in this area.
So therefore, there are at least 3
3
different
yes.
times that you can
April,
take.
May, and August, from my understanding.
Ain't that like paint and liquids and stuff? It's not like construction debris and doors and
I
stuff
don't know
like that,
whether
is
it
it?
is.
I would
don't
think
know.
anything that would be potentially had was corrosive, flammable, toxic.
I thought it was
think is
only
basically the
chemicals.
guidelines they follow
Yeah, I
up.
thought
It's
it was only
mostly
chemical.
chemicals, I
Yeah.
think, and
Yeah, it's only chemicals at our waste authority. I've gone there before with old paint and stuff,
Yeah, a lot of times,
Yeah,
we're getting those type of items. Kerosene,
right?
Coleman fuel for lanterns.
Yeah. The question I was going to just follow up on a little bit, that Supervisor Biggs shows up over there with an old door that's
Off my
in-
front
in-
door.
Yeah, and in a house that, and you don't really know what kind of paint's on it. But she shows up and the tenant over said, well, what's on it? Well, I don't know. It's a door and it's been painted. And he says, well, we're not sure. And says, but you have to ship it off to be tested before we accept it. Well, the first thing is, where do you ship it to? How much is the cost? I mean, you got a door that's going in that's, if it's worth anything other than kindling, you're going to spend $300 or $400 to ship it off, get it tested, and say, no, it wasn't anything hazardous on it. But we just didn't know. I mean, it seems to me like we need to work some way to make this process a little easier for our citizens and things, because I know some people in Supervisor Biggs' case, if she went over with that door that they wouldn't take it, it might be on the side of McCoy Road or somewhere.
Down
I
your
might lose it about 9 o'clock at night. And so I just think we need to look and try to make this a little bit easier for our citizens. I mean, it seems a little complicated for us, and it's supposed to be our county ordinance. And just imagine some of the citizens out there watching, and I'm like, man, those people are going crazy over there. But is it a way that we could have some people dialogue?
To kind of follow up on that thinking too, have you had any conversation with the town of Blacksburg or the town of Christiansburg about what they're doing? I mean, we're a little bit different in that we have sites that people bring stuff to. In Christiansburg and Blacksburg, you can just take it out to the road.
Right.
But
they can take these materials to our sites.
well, they can. They can. They're citizens
And they
of the
do
county.
when they have
They're
large
welcome.
loads.
And I think, and one of the reasons we wanted to have this work session tonight, and Bill and I have talked about this several times, Bill's done an excellent job of coming in and trying to tighten up and clean up some things, but I think what you're seeing, Bill, is one of the frustrations is we may be absolutely correct in following what the Solid Waste Authority is telling us to do. We may be absolutely correct in following what our ordinance is telling us to do, but there's just a real concern for how do citizens, and I do think what Supervisor Brown said is that no matter what we want to say would happen, there's the chance that if it's extremely difficult to get rid of some of this stuff, it's just going to start showing up in places that we have to wind up dealing with it anyway.
Right.
But go ahead.
I'm willing to do whatever the county would like to do.
I know you are.
You know, basically with this manifest, we just went back to the ordinance that's in place, that's been in the books.
Right.
So we're just basically falling back on what should have been followed, but just with the lax enforcement over the years, then the residents were allowed to bring it. Now all of a sudden they're being told not to.
It was expected that it could be taken.
Right. So, you know, the residents are very upset now, understandably, but the fact of the matter is that it should have been enforced all along because this ordinance has been in the books for quite some time.
We need to make it easier for our citizens to comply, not complicated. I think generally our citizens want to comply with it, but the more complicated the process is, the more frustrated they get.
Yes, sir.
But if you can comply with this ordinance by these simple rules here, and I think you can gain a lot more support with honey, so to speak, than vinegar.
Well, it sounds like it's two problems. I mean, well, you're really in a position where you can't really do too much except maybe talk to the two towns. It sounds like to me we need to be talking to Mr. Creed, who's our representative on the Solid Waste Authority, to go back and say, you know, we need some help here. Now you gotta remember the two towns, they pay for their trash service. The citizens pay for that. We don't have trash service, so it'd be interesting to know when the town of Blacksburg collects those things, is that covered under what the citizens collectively pay or not? I don't know. But they have you're right, they have the cleanup days when we can put stuff out, so I don't know. We don't collect a fee for that in the county. So so I think we need to sort of work both ways. So it'd be nice if you could find out what they do. But on the other hand, I think we really need for the Solid Waste Authority to step forward and be a little bit more flexible.
I agree. This is their policy, and we just basically had to follow, you know, their lead. They brought it to our attention.
Maybe they need to have more than one time a year where you bring stuff. I mean, to me, that's not very reasonable.
Mr. Gabriel?
My comments were a little bit flip earlier, so I apologize for those. But I mean, I think that
I heard much worse.
The night's not over. Lost my train of thought. Anyway, I agree about the Solid Waste Authority too. Maybe this is not a question that you can answer, but just so I make sure I understand, is that two things. The first thing is that if a citizen brings an item to the Solid Waste Authority on the collection day and fills out the manifest and says that this is not hazardous, if it's construction material, then that's it.
Then it's it. They'll accept it.
all
Yeah, as long as they provide some sort of proof that it's not hazardous, then yes, the Solid Waste Authority will accept it.
So that, you know, I think so in large, a good chunk of our problem could be solved by, as Ms. Biggs was saying, kind of if we could work with the Solid Waste Authority to expand these hours, and then people know that most of these construction materials probably aren't going to fall into the hazardous category, and they can simply be disposed of at this certain time at this certain place. And then my second point is, or my second question is gone from my mind. So, if I come back with it, I'll let you know.
I just want to say that I have a really strong approach to trying to be consistent. As I mentioned before, you know, both with there's a real issue where a resident will go to one site and the site attendant will say, no, we don't accept it here. Then they'll drive to another site and, oh yeah, bring it in. So, you know, that is part of this approach as well, is keeping things black and white, keeping things consistent. So everybody's on board with the policy and the procedures and what is accepted and what is not accepted at the sites. And there is, you know, a lot of that is behind this approach to being very rigid and being very stern and being very black and white, because, you know, you provide that gray area, then you're really increasing confusion. And a lot of people start wondering, and, you know, if a door is accepted at this site and another place says no, you know, we're not, it's just, you know, you're just opening, I don't know, it could just be a real problem.
Sure, and this is really actually related to that. Remember my second point is that going off Mr. Brown's suggestion is that would it be possible for us to direct staff to come back to us to revisit this ordinance and to see if there are ways that we could clarify or amend this ordinance so that it is clear
So it
about
makes sense.
specific items.
That was
That's
another
what makes
purpose of the
sense to
work
me.
session is Bill and I got to talking, Bill said, it's already what the board's already adopted this. It's not like we've made something new. This is just something we've not enforced. So then the comment was, well, maybe we need to have a discussion about that again to help. The sentiment that I'm hearing from everybody is we want to try to make it as simple and straightforward as our citizens as we can. And I know from talking to Bill, he wants the same thing, but he's also being challenged with, as citizens have said, well, why can't you just take it? Well, here's what happens if you take it. And as you pointed out earlier, we can set up a big dumpster and take all kinds of stuff, and then we're going to be writing great big checks to somebody to test it and get rid of it.
It's a possibility, for sure.
Can I make a quick comment?
Yes.
You stand up pretty good under pressure, and we're not trying to kill the messenger. I mean, this is just the way we are, and this is business.
Well, stick around for
You
the
don't
budget
wanna come back.
discussion.
We tried to kill him.
Mr. Brown, I understand this is a very complicated, difficult subject and topic.
Okay. It's not, the questions that we ask and things like this is not a personal attack upon you.
I understand that.
Okay, I just wanted to make that clear. Sometimes
Thank you, sir. I
the
appreciate it.
messenger will get up there and it says, God, I just brought the message. They are really doing
You
it.
had me fooled.
No.
Well, I'm willing to do it. I'm willing to help any
We
way I possibly
appreciate what
can.
you're doing
Yeah.
and so forth.
Thank
but-
you, sir.
But you don't hear it all. We as board members, citizens will call you, email you, and this, that, and that, and say, oh, yeah, and you hope it'll go away, but it won't go away.
Mr. Creed is the one.
I've fielded plenty phone calls from displeased residents, so I do understand the frustration, I really do.
But I didn't want you to think that, man, those guys was tough on me when we were there. No, we tough on everybody.
We are.
Ask Angie and Mark.
I wasn't on the board when this was passed, but I'm guessing that this was designed to keep contractors from coming and delivering.
That was my impression,
Yeah,
too.
that's my impression
And
too.
that is, and we don't want contractors bringing 5 loads of debris. But I want somebody to be able to fix it. I replaced the hinges to my toilet. Does that mean I have to take those construction materials out to the solid waste authority?
We accept porcelain at the sites.
Okay. No, I'm talking about the inside.
Oh, Lordy, this is worse than chickens. It is. I'm kidding. This is, I'm just sitting here just totally.
We're gonna have to clean up this site now, I think.
Well, I think you have to recognize and understand too is that the site attendants cannot keep their eyes on every resident and vehicle coming in there. And the fact of the matter is we do have contractors sneaking into the sites. They'll stop a mile down the road, take those magnetic labels off the side of their trucks and drive in there, dump off, stop on their way out, put the magnets back on, and back to work they go. And that's a fact, and we try to stop it when we can, but people get smart and clever, and they know ways to work around, to dispose of what they want to get rid of. But that is a real concern is that we do get contractors into consolidated sites, and it's not supposed to be. It's supposed to be for residents only.
Well,
So that adds an additional concern to it. Is that there could be a contractor get in there and dump off stuff.
I happen to be a frequent user of the consolidated sites because I live in the country. And over the years, I've seen people bring in 4 tires, and then later on in the afternoon, they're bringing in 4 more tires. And, you could bring 4 in for free, and then you could bring, I think, 4 in for each person in the vehicle. So so I've seen that stuff going on. I have seen contractors. And I've mentioned to site attendants, I said, we're not supposed to be taking that. And this has been a while back. And they said, well, how do I stop them? They're not policemen. Okay.
All right, they're not. And that's
And
good. That's a very valid point.
If you were aware, you probably aren't, but most of the board is, that about 4 years ago, we did away with our
We're
decals.
gonna have to, we're gonna
Right,
replace
and that makes things more difficult.
And then people coming in from Floyd County or wherever.
Yes,
I had
sir.
a big battle with Floyd County over that a couple of years ago. I
it.
was criticized by them. But, you know, you can't do everything perfect. We've got to do the best we can. But I hope you and Craig and maybe Mr. Creed being on the Solid Waste Authority can get together and come up with some kind of formula to make this work. Also, I believe you two young ladies and Matt, you pay extra for your trash service, do you not?
Yes, we do.
It operates as an enterprise fund, as your water and sewer and as our PSA.
A lot of money.
Yeah. But I'll bet you the people who are getting rid of the big stuff, they can't put it on the curb, we'll bring it out to our sites, and they're county citizens. They have a right to, you know.
I can show you a couple stoves and like a whole building. You go right up here on Lawn Drive and it's set out for the spring cleanup for the town. And I'm sitting like, well, God, that lady must have tore down a whole building. I mean, it's setting out there for the town when it comes to pick it up. Even if it's hazardous and they put it out, is a citizen required to label that piece of stuff? I know you don't know, it's the town requirement, to label it. And then when the town comes through, either town with the big dump truck, and they just throw it up on there, and this label come off, and they go over to dump it, and it's half hazardous and stuff, they really don't know where it come from.
Right.
Yeah. So,
They just dump it in there.
yeah. So I don't know. It's
We just
just
had
like
our
my wife
cleanup.
is going to say, what took the meeting so long? I said, trash.
Well, they
And that's only the
understand
beginning.
that, but I mean, you know,
So I'm done with that.
I'm just
So
gonna tell them chickens.
Anybody else?
I'm done with this.
You cratered on that one.
Yeah,
Well, what I've heard tonight is we will certainly follow up with the Solid Waste Authority. We'll have a discussion with Mr. Creed. May be good to invite Alan Cummings to a meeting to explain from the Solid Waste Authority what their requirements are. We did, one of the things, again, we did want to make you aware of what our ordinance does say, so that if a citizen is calling to complain about certain things, we're not really doing anything other than enforcing what our ordinance has already said, and we'll get a copy of that back out to everybody.
And just to let you know, Mr. Meadows, we do provide, or I provide copies to the site attendants, so if that is explained to a resident and, you know, they do have this available to provide, so they will know for themselves, they can see the ordinance for themselves.
Could you get us copies of that?
Sure.
That'd be handy to have.
If you'll email me that again in the morning, I'll
No problem at all.
thank you.
And is it a way that, said if that's it, that maybe a larger copy could be sort of put on the plexiglass to where citizens would see it when they come into the lot? I know you give out a
Well,
paper
Bill,
copy, but
if
it's possible.
I've actually held Bill up on that because he came to me several weeks ago with a sign that basically stipulates what's on the ordinance that we were going to put on the dumpsters, and I said, hang on, let's make sure we have a conversation, but we can certainly do
Yeah.
that.
We used to have them.
But what I'm saying, after we do whatever and come up with, and then I'm looking at something like, I mean, when you go in, you know when they're closed on the holidays, they put
Right.
those
Right.
signs out there. But it's something somewhere, I don't know where you have I think it's a board at some of them, to where information's placed on that board, and it could be in a little larger font
Sure.
than just that one pager, a little larger, so
I think it's
elderly people like me can read it.
I think it's a great idea.
Yeah.
And that'll help support the site attendants as well. When you
Yeah.
explain to the resident, I'm
Yeah.
sorry, we can't take this item, and they can point them to that sign, and they can review it for themselves. So I think it's a great idea.
Yeah.
Okay, anybody else? Welcome to the board.
You're welcome to stay for the budget work session too. So.
Planning on remaining in Montgomery County.
Are we going to take a break, or are we going to keep going?
Can I make if the board is interested in a break, can I make a suggestion that we get through the next item, which is the public safety building renovation? Shouldn't take but a few minutes, and then if you want to break before the.
Especially since we've got staff waiting for that, that would be good.
Yep.
Okay, Mr. Quilby, how are you?
I'm doing well, how are you?
This is some good news. So
This is good news, huh?
you can't never tell. He's got that seat warm for you, and it's going to get a little hot. No, I'm just kidding.
we don't get Ronnie in a tie very often. Good to see that, Ronnie. Thank you.
Just notice that I think this is good news. I'll take us back to the September 10th meeting very quickly. Wiley and Wilson made a presentation to the board. They showed us the building design, and they also showed us a budget. And you'll notice that the building construction is shown as 11.3 million. And then I'll go ahead and fast forward to today. And on March 20th, the county received 4 bids for the public safety building. They ranged from almost 8.2 million to about 8.5 million. They were 4 local contractors. With the courthouse project, we had an out-of-state contractor, so we had 4 competitive local contractors. And I guess that's probably all I need to say here. With an alternate, the project would be about $8.565 million. And the alternates the alternate is a wire mesh screen shading device. It's an architectural feature. And then if you look at the September 10th budget, with the $11.3 million projected construction costs and a total budget cost of $14.4 million or close to it. And then if you look at our new budget based on the bids that we received, the total project budget is $11,435,000, which is right at $3 million less than the budget that Wiley Wilson presented to the board. So that's good news. And that really is all that I had for my presentation.
This doesn't require formal action by the board because the the funds have already been set aside, but I certainly wanted to make sure we had consensus from the board to move on. So
did we set the big amount aside or the new amount aside, or what did we do?
How much is set aside?
Yeah, how much? Out of what?
Carol's looking at me. The total budget we've had for this project's around 14 million. Is that not correct?
I believe we've had originally allocated 5 million for the sheriff's office, 2.5 million for the jail, which was reallocated to this project.
Yeah, you're pulling all the pieces together, yeah.
Right. I don't do that in my head because it's had a fairly long history.
So how much is
That
it?
was close to 8
About
million,
14.
and I think about 3 million, 8, and $11 million, including the savings in the courthouse.
Yep.
That's
Yep.
So we can roughly pay cash for this? Based on
It's borrowed money that we've got set aside,
But the money's set
but the good
aside.
news is we don't have to. Yes,
We don't have to borrow
we don't
more.
have to borrow. The money's set aside. We're ready to roll forward.
Yeah.
And one of the things that we'll do is take a look if we've got funds set aside beyond that. The sheriff and I have had some conversations. I know there's still quite a few issues in the jail because one thing that happened is the budgets that were originally set, and you said them, the public safety building was $5 million and the jail was $2.5 million, and they were grossly underestimated. So we had to put the two together plus some just to get the public safety building done. But now that the bids look favorable, if there's some opportunities to correct some additional things in the jail, we need to take a look at that.
I would also ask if we couldn't start looking at the magistrate's office and potentially bringing it into the public safety building. I deal with that more than you folks do just simply because of what I do. But right now, if you go to a lot of different facilities, they pull into a semi-secure area. They take a person before the magistrate. We don't have that opportunities. The magistrate's building, I know, has got black mold issues. I think Craig has talked with us about it. It's bad. The building is old and has some serious issues. When I say old, it's 100+ years old. I guess it's historic, and I know it's got brick falling off of it in places. And so I would really like to see us try to incorporate something about bringing the magistrate's office in. And I'm talking out because we're here, but I would love to see maybe if we put the magistrate's office in that building, maybe bringing court services into the old sheriff's department, and then we would have that lot right there on the corner of Radford and Depot Street to be able, as a surplus piece of property, that's a corner piece of property, and maybe help pay for some of these things.
Steve Phillips and I are deep into some of those similar discussions. Matter of fact, we've got a meeting with the magistrate Wednesday morning to talk about some options. We do have an immediate need to move them out of that building. That's the best way I know how to put it. So we're looking at some options for short term, and then recognizing that we may need to address some long-term things as well. But I appreciate those comments, and we're already moving down some of that same trail.
Yeah, with a little bit of this $3 million that's left over, I think it wouldn't be any problem if it's a separate door or whatever to do what it needs. But I think we need to sort of keep in mind that the balance, we sort of look at that jail over there to do some stuff there at the jail instead of moving it somewhere else.
So are you guys okay with us starting to move forward?
Sounds wonderful to me, especially when you come in like it's like $3 million under than over.
We've been very fortunate in what we've built recently.
Well,
some heartburn.
And I will say this, and this is a testament to Mr. Requilme and Mr. Phillips and Wiley and Wilson. We actually delayed bidding this project 60 days, 90 days. We pushed it out.
Probably about 45 days.
Okay, good. It wasn't that long. 45 days. We actually delayed bidding the project because there were some additional items we wanted to make sure we got into the bid documents in order to do everything we can to minimize change orders. We found some things that needed to be added, and rather than doing it with addendums, or rather than putting it out to bid and then saying, oh, by the way, we made a lot of tightening things down before we put it out to bid, and Ronnie and Steve and the folks really did a great, and the sheriff with his staff looking at some things really did a great job of getting those things tight. So certainly won't sit here and say there won't be any change orders. I've never in my life been in a job that there weren't any change orders, but I hope we've minimized it to as much as we can. So
You brought backup, and you didn't need it, did you?
Are you ready for your 10 minutes, Mr. Phillips? All right.
Thanks.
Nobody else, thank you, Ron.
Thank you
very much. We'll take a 10-minute break.
Yeah, okay.
Thanks, guys.
Meeting back to order, please. And the next item on the meeting is the 2013-2014 budget. And I guess, do you want to introduce our first speaker? Mr. Tuck. Shrugging their responsibility.
I'll say my name.
You've got 3 minutes.
Yeah, we reduced you.
I guess you can have as much as you want.
You get these when you get the argument from the Virginia Supreme Court, the Court of Appeals, and the U.S. Supreme Court. They have the little bells. But I know some of you are saying, why are you doing this? And I guess when I ran, I hated the politicians who just took a stance and just said, no, I'm against taxes, or I'm for a tax increase, without trying to explain why they were for something or against something, or without being able to simply put forth a budget. So many times in Washington, what we see is, oh, hey, listen, I'm against any new taxes, but they don't show a way of being able to pay for it. Or I'm for a new program, but they don't show a way of being able to pay for it. And so that's part of the reason what I'm doing. And also, I felt last year, and maybe it was just because it was my first year, of getting a dialogue. I felt like in some ways, and I'm to blame a little bit, because it felt like I was playing poker, and I realized that that's not, we weren't playing poker. I could go ahead and lay my cards out on the table, talk with you about it. Annette made a point when I gave her a presentation last year. I did it on the date that we were voting, and she said, can you get it to us a little bit earlier? And so that's what I tried to do. And as I told Matt earlier, I was going to try to attach an audio clip with Thrift Shop, but I don't know if y'all, but I decided I wouldn't do that, that wouldn't be appropriate. All of you know the proposed tax increase is $1.9 million. 2 cents of it is the 1.4 as far as the real estate taxes, and 10 cents is the personal property tax that brings it up to about $1.9 million. And in my mind, before we do a tax increase, is there any items that we can reduce from the proposed budget before we do a tax increase? And for me, the $1.4 million for future school construction came out. This board has already addressed the $625,000. We've already made a lot of the big decisions in regards to becoming self-insured and saving those monies. How did we come to that? Now, I'm not a big patron of studies, but one of the things that Craig came to us about was, hey, listen, we need a study to try to evaluate our insurance plans. And that's where some of these almost $300,000 in savings are going to come from. $500,000 for additional staff compensation. And $223,000 and some change to unfreeze the position and add additional county staff. And I remember going through the seminar when we were board of supervisors, and they talked low-hanging fruit, low-hanging fruit. And I saw this picture and I really liked it. And so I was saying, is there low-hanging fruit? If we didn't do a tax increase, would there still be the $2.2 million for local schools? Yes. In local tax revenue, the schools would still be getting the $2.2 million if we didn't set that $1.4 million aside. And while setting aside money for the future is not a bad idea, I understand where we're coming from. We have some assets that will generate revenue for the future. Some of them are big pieces of property, like we have at the Blacksburg Middle School, which I guess the price tag now is about $5.1 million. Some of them are small pieces, like the Lafayette Elliston site that we've discussed. And some of them are maybe in between with the Price's Fork and the Blacksburg High School. But we do have some assets in the tune of millions of dollars that will be able to generate some revenue to spend towards schools and future school construction if that's what's needed. Once their debt gets paid down, then we're going to have additional options. And this is a slide from last year that Craig provided us, and it just goes through what our debt service is, what we're supposed to be as far as addressing debt service and in comparison. And I just wanted to show that again. That was last year. We're moving another year forward. We're paying down that debt, and hopefully we're going to be able to address some of those needs in the future once we get that debt paid down. Another thing is, and yes, there's someone here from the Roanoke Times, but remember that Roanoke Times article, they said, wait a minute, Roanoke County schools fund their schools better per pupil, more per child. But you know what? If you take the debt service that we pay and you add everything together, and this, again, I want to thank the staff for giving me some of this great information. And where do I start from? The budget that the staff has prepared. And I meant to say that from the beginning, and I'm very thankful for that. But you're talking about $900 more per pupil when you take everything and you compare apples to apples and you put everything into the pot. Now, they also have about 4,000 more students than we do, approximately. Now, when I looked at the real estate taxes, it seems like, and we talked about this again last year, we're dramatically lower than Roanoke County. With $1.09, and even with a 2-cent tax increase, we're 20 cents lower. But there's a big difference when you start factoring in our towns and what our citizens pay. Town of Blacksburg, as I understand it, they're not going to raise their property taxes this year, and so they're at 22 cents. I've heard that Christiansburg's property, they're considering up to a 5-cent tax increase. So that would be looking at 16 cents. But Benton's property tax rates is only 3 cents. Tax rates in the New River Valley. And I just ran this graph, but you could go out, but you see, if you look at what Montgomery County is doing back just in the last 5 years from 2008 forward, and these are actually, and I want to warn you about comparing apples to apples. This is based on the year, not the fiscal year, but the year that they were passed. The information that the staff gave me
was based on the fiscal year, and that you're going to see some, but I wanted to draw your attention to that. But you look at places like Withfield, which is only 45 minutes to an hour away, they're down at 44 cents, and they've been set and even for many years. If you factor in, and I kind of like the rainbow of colors, and you say you're a Blacksburg resident, you're right at $1.09. Montgomery County, you're at the 87 on this chart, as well as Radford, Smith County, Carroll County, Giles, Pulaski, Floyd, and Wythe. And if you average, it's not including the town, the average tax rate in basically the New River Valley is 62 cents. In 7 years, the tax rates here in Montgomery County have increased by over 40%, just 40% and a little bit of change. But when you look at that, that's a tremendous thing. When you start talking about businesses, how much of the businesses have been able to generate 40% more revenue? If you're looking at us being able, what we're doing is we're saying, look, we've got some needs, and we're taking a lot of taxes. And I've got the question mark, wouldn't it be a nice year not to raise taxes? We've done a good job. We've looked at this and the self-insurance. We're going to save $300,000. And for the most part, our employees are never going to see any difference whatsoever. There is some concerns I have about the family plan increase, and that's something that we've talked about as well. But $300,000 in savings. If you take that $300,000 and you say, okay, Craig, staff is great, and then we just said, work with that $300,000 and let's not do a tax increase. Yes, it's $200,000 less per year, or $199, but work with that. Work with that and take a look at, keep the positions. Or maybe you say, okay, I won't use one of those positions and fluctuate and work with it. Insurance savings give us lots of options. And like I said, we could talk with Craig about giving that kind of flexibility. We could look at eliminate the 17% increase on the family plan for employees. Give cost of living raises to the folks who make the leaves. Provide $30,000 a year for spaying and neutering. And I talked with the vet again just to confirm that the people in the private sector do not believe that spaying and neutering service is competing against private interests. They're taken care of. As I've been told by several vets now, the #1 leading cause for rabies is stray and wild cats. We're doing a governmental function, but we're using a private entity to be able to do that. And provide $5,000 in funds for Christiansburg Institute. We all talked about that. And in my mind, and you're looking at, we spend about $5,000 a year on the Montgomery County Museum. I think we need to be spending about $5,000 to try to upgrade and keep a part of history for Montgomery County. Do we have to have all 4 positions? This is what we talked about, and Craig is going to be talking with us about in the future. If there's some of these positions that we might be able to wait a year on, wait to see if we get the same kind of growth with our fingers crossed that we're going to be able to address. Maybe we don't get to address all the needs that we want this year, but maybe we can go a year without the finance manager. Maybe we can't. That's something that we can talk about with Craig. And by volunteering, this is one of the slides again from last year, but we talked about $11.9 million a year, and I'm going to quote Craig again, 17-cent tax increase if we had to have paid volunteers. If we start and keep raising up the taxes, will they have the same chance? Those are the working class people. And I know that we need to address growth. And I was happening to go through, and I had an old powwow. And yes, there is a picture of Annette Perkins in this 1978 powwow. You look fine, Annette. But one of the things
skinny then.
You look fine. I'll just leave it. And we had 1,240 students at Blacksburg High School. I called today and they had 1,132. They're actually down in their numbers, not up. So yes, we do have to address growth. We do have some areas that we've got to address here in Christiansburg, and I understand that. But couldn't we just have 1 year, in my mind, of saying, take a break and let's not raise taxes? Now, that's where I'm at. Am I willing to talk with you guys and flesh out where we need to be? Too many times in Washington, you see people say, it's got to be my way or forget it. And nothing gets done. And so I'm all ears to listen to you, to quote Ross Perot, to talk about it. But one of the things that I feel strongly about is when you start hearing people saying they need to put more money because their escrow isn't going to cover it anymore, it's hitting them. When you start looking at that slide that says that tax rates have increased by 40% in 7 years. Thank you all for listening to me. I hope I didn't go on too long. Appreciate it.
No, you want to step first so we can talk to you up
listen,
there, and you can go back to some of your slides and everything. Yeah.
Well, and I'm putting myself out there, and if you, and this is where I'm at, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you've got. Thanks for not putting me on the hot seat too much, then.
Anybody?
Also, go back to the slide there with the taxes of, you got the taxes right here, this one right here.
Yes.
Okay, now, when I looked at it today, I said, well, he's comparing us with Giles. Giles is about 18% the size of Montgomery County. And I went down and looked at Pulaski, which we're twice the size of Pulaski, 36% the size of Montgomery County. And Floyd, how many of Floyd's, you could probably put 5 or 6 Floyd's counties within Montgomery County. It's about 16% the size of Montgomery County. And I didn't even bother to look at Rafford. They're about 14 or 15,000. Yeah, and Wythe County, 3 Wythe counties will fit population-wise in Montgomery County. And Montgomery, according to my latest numbers, is like 94, 92. And so, yes, when we look at those numbers and average them out, but the way I see it is that, my perception is that there's a whole lot more people in Montgomery County. There's a whole lot more services that are required in Montgomery County. You look for an example at Giles County. They have 2 school strands, Niles and Giles. We have 4, and I believe the smallest one we got in East Mon is about the size of their largest one over there.
Probably, it's pretty close. I don't know the exact number, but Bill, I
know what you're saying. Yeah.
But we're competing against. We had, was it Nanotechnologies went over to their industrial park. One of the things that they factor in is real estate taxes. Mm-hmm. We're competing against them, and one of the things that businesses want, and it's only a 15-minute drive over to Giles County. A 30-minute drive if you want to live in Harrisburg.
I mean, that's the same thing. I mean, you'd be surprised how many people live here and commute to Roanoke daily, and how many people in Roanoke commute to Virginia Tech and different areas here daily. And so it's not like it used to be years ago. People lived within the area that they work in. But now, I guess, when you look at a region and you put a job there, so what? The commute is 45 miles. People will do it for the pay. Now I'm lost where I was.
I'm sorry.
I'm not the sharpest sawmill, but I'm trying to get there. And when I think too, there's a slide in there. You talk about the lowest paid people, giving them a raise.
Yeah. Cost of living.
Cost of living raise. Well, if you got a person who's been there, who's just a fraction up, and that's where you sort of force compression further. You're going to give this person a raise down here, but not the person up there. A cost of living, the lowest paid people. And if you do that 2 or 3 years down the road, you're going to have people who's probably with 3 or 4 years of service making as much as a person with 12 or 14 years of service. And I mean, to understand compression, it's pretty difficult for me to work beside Jim, and I'm making so much an hour, and I've got 10 years on Jim, and Jim's making 3 cents difference in me, and I'm sitting like, something's wrong with this picture.
And one of the reasons I put that in there is these are possibilities on that slide. Yeah. These are things I'd like to talk about as far as, but do I have all the answers as far as, you did a lot more, just from my perspective, because I run my own business and because I'm part of another business, you have worked inside departments and you've seen some of those issues that I don't see. But one of the things I guess I was looking at is talking points about the $300,000. We did the merit pay raises last year for $150,000. And that was a 2% merit pay raise. That didn't cover all our employees, and it may have not addressed some of the compression issues. But to me, it at least addressed, it was looking at some of those problems. And I was trying to think of who's been hit hardest by the gas prices going up, by the real estate taxes going up. I can afford to pay those things because I'm very fortunate. My law practice does well. But I also remember when I was a janitor putting myself through law school, and money was so tight that it was hot dogs and macaroni and cheese, and it wasn't Kraft, it was the, it was the generic brand.
Yeah.
And so I get, maybe that's part of my mentality where I'm coming from to address that.
You know, and to me, the one of the most, I guess, displeasures about this job is increase in taxes. I mean, out of all the decisions that we make, and I don't know anybody who lives anywhere enjoy paying more taxes. I mean, you hear people say that, double my taxes, I'll do this and that. Do they really mean what they say? No. All the people that came over here said that double my taxes, or I'll be giving donations when you build new schools. I bet you hadn't seen a donation in the treasurer's office from somebody saying that, oh, I'll pay double when I pay my taxes. I bet you it hadn't been a donation in there from
I'm looking at our staff. They don't,
It wasn't double their taxes.
Oh, you got one donation out of, I don't know how many people
How
was
much
here.
was it?
$500.
Well, hey, I'm very appreciative. I'm very appreciative of $500.
That's
I
good.
will not knock
That's
that.
a start. That's a start. Yeah.
But I guess on that slide that we were talking about, that to me is talking points.
Yeah.
You know, to you, the $30,000 for spaying and neutering, maybe that's not a big item.
It serves a good purpose, excellent
the
purpose.
17% increase on the family plan, again, that goes to where I'm at. I had a son who had a medical issue. I would much rather have insurance on my kids and me not go to the hospital than I know that my kids can go to the hospital. And so that's one of the reasons that I was looking at and saying, okay, this is something that we can address.
I like that part of it.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's.
And I don't have the price tag for that, and that's one of the things that we'll work from. But we can work on doing some of those things afterwards. But I didn't want to just get up here and say, and frankly, for a while, until the insurance, if the insurance wouldn't have been a $300,000 savings, I would have been saying, what about a real estate, not the personal property tax, and leaving it in. If we didn't have that $300,000 in savings, that's what I would have been telling you today. But we're fortunate, and I'll say this, every single board member, I believe, supported that self-insurance plan. I don't think anybody didn't support it, and y'all can correct me if I'm wrong.
Do you believe, as probably many of us believe, that we're going to be addressing the Christiansburg strand of schools in the next 4, 5, 6, 8 years?
I think that when we start paying the debt service down, that's when we're going to be able to look at the Christiansburg High School. I believe, in my opinion, that we need to address the overcrowding at the elementary schools. But I believe in using the old buildings that we have. They're good, solid buildings. We put, in the numbers I've heard, between about $3.5 million to up to about $5 million.
The middle school.
It's much more than that. It's much more than that. The Cardinal Tech study that the school board did, I think it put it in the $15 to $20 million range.
Into that building.
Because if you talk to people over there, they the way they put it is every time somebody flushes the toilet, you cross your fingers, because everything. I mean, it was Band-Aids were put on that school in an emergency situation, so for a full-time school, it would need to be thoroughly gutted and redone.
And
it's cheaper than building a new school.
Yes, and we've already put $3 to $5 million, and it's in a good central location. We could use and pull from the Falling Branch side because it's central. We could help with Christiansburg, but now, do I know that there are people on the school board that disagree with me? Yes, people on the school board disagree. They think that we've got to have a new school for Christiansburg. But as somebody who is in Christiansburg a lot, I don't think the citizens of Christiansburg are saying we've got to have a new elementary school. So to me, what is the biggest thing that's going to be facing us, but it's 6, 8 years down the road, is going to be Christiansburg High School and being able to address that. And hopefully we'll be paying down some of the debt service, and we'll be able to address that need while maybe making some changes, getting it working. and we've got a building there that while it's older, it seems to be pretty solid, and it's been used for a school for probably, I guess, 60 or 70 years. And I noticed that there's Virginia Tech still using the elementary school that my mom went to on Draper, and right there on downtown Blacksburg.
Yeah, but they continually spend money on them to renovate them and keep them up.
Yeah, they do.
One other question too is that I'll comment that when I look at the proposed 2 cents raise and take a serious look at this budget, and I'm pretty sure that this board here, if I had to be asked, yes, we have a forward-thinking board. And when I say forward-thinking, we know some things are going to be coming down the pike, and we might as well prepare for them and so forth. And as I look at this 2 cents, I've had to justify my stance on it to a number of people. And it's just like a savings account. You're putting it away. And the biggest question that I guess I had to respond, is the school board going to have access to the money? Are they going to be able to milk it off? No. And you explain to them, they can't get it unless the board approves it, so to speak. And they didn't seem so bad as long as they knew that the school board couldn't just reach in those funds. And I'm hoping that 4 or 5 years down the road, that the citizens will say, man, that board was pretty sharp putting that money away for future stuff, and the taxes may only go up a little bit instead of going up drastically. If we had 2 cents put away for 25 or 30 years of future boards, there would not been a 12-cent spike in the income taxes. It might have been 2, 3, or whatever. And I'm hoping, the way I see this budget, I call it the poor man's budget, because we're saving for the rainy day that we know that's going to come. And we didn't know it was going to be a hurricane and flood with the Blacksburg and Roanoke situation. When you go out on that limb and borrow that much money. But just think, if we had prepared, if the boards had prepared some for it, we would be in a lot better shape. I'm hoping 5, 6 years down the road, we look and we have this pot of money that's accumulated by these 2 pennies sitting aside, and that we'd be able to address some stuff.
And I guess,
so I may be wrong.
And you know what? I look at it a little bit differently.
Yeah.
I think, all right, those boards didn't raise taxes. It gave some flexibility for us to be able to do some of the things that we've done now. And I guess I look at it as, yes, it is a savings account, and there is a large part of me that says, okay, I like what Craig did with the budget. I like setting that $1.4 million aside. But I started thinking about, as I said beforehand, there's folks that they've taken a pretty good hit in the last 7 years. And I was just thinking that wouldn't it be nice for them not to take a hit this year?
Well, I look at it that way too, as well. When you made a good point about the surplus properties that we have, there's going to be some money coming. But when, it's just like...
and I know that you want to sell that property as much as I do. I don't think there's a single board member here who's hoping that we can hold on to it a day longer. If we could get a price for it, a reasonable price, to get it back on the tax rolls, we would all be thrilled.
And I'm not being critical of past boards. I know that their heart was in it and they done the best that they could. But when you look at this little graph here about taxes, and every time it was growth in the county, they would roll it back and almost make it revenue neutral. We probably could have had...
We did make it.
That's what we did.
Yeah.
We were on the board when that went on. We didn't agree with it, but we were outnumbered.
Yeah, but the thing about it, that's how Roanoke County does so well. The tax rate stays $1.09. It's been $1.09 for I don't know how many years. They reassess every year with their own in-house assessors, and they grow every year in funding.
And just as the 4 positions, there were several. The reason I mentioned the finance manager, having a webmaster in this day and time, and I understand that, and also trying to work with the school board, I understand that the other position is going to be working with the Commissioner of Revenue, doing some of the things that Mary talked about that we've been talking, or she said they've been talking about doing on the board for 15 years or plus. I understood that one. I was hoping that maybe we might be able to hold off on a finance manager for a year, and because we've been able to get through it a year. But I don't know enough about it. I want to hear the staff talk to me about it, and I want to hear what their pros and cons are. And so before I said, look, that's the one I want to get rid of, let's say this, and I want to hear what the staff has to say because I trust them. I trust them to give us these numbers to be able to work from, and I wouldn't be, my starting point was the numbers that the staff has given me.
I guess the whole thing hinges on whether we want to put 1.4 million away for capital improvements starting this coming budget year, or not put it away. And even if we didn't put it away this year and we start putting it away next year, we would already be 1.4 million, not behind, but wouldn't have that much.
We wouldn't, but maybe we're going to have the same type of growth. Maybe we're not. I'm hoping that the economy continues to heat up. I'm hopeful that we'll have maybe not 2.8%, $2.8 million of growth, but maybe we'll have 2 million, 2.1 to be able to address some of the needs and then be able to take care of some of the things that we're talking about here. So, and it's not, go ahead, Jim. I'm sorry.
I'm looking at this thing with the tax rates from 1997 to 2014.
And
they fluctuate.
Email that.
Yeah, this is there's something I'd like to see on this if I could.
Is it on my page?
What was the budgets on these years? I don't think they went down.
No, I think
the tax rate goes down, but the budget goes up because of the increase in values.
The budget stays
I got on the board
roughly
98.
There was,
The budget stays roughly flat.
I printed that before I brought that with me. That came
During the reassessment.
That's an email, I believe. that Craig sent me in
Because we had about 8 years where we were having 30+% growth
Did he send it just to?
in the 4-year period.
It's in the budget.
Is it?
Yeah, it's in the budget.
Okay.
You said it didn't need to.
You know,
I just have
I mean,
to print that thing. Yeah.
32% growth. If you're growing 3, 4, 5% a year, that's good. We were growing 8. My assessment went up 76% one year.
See, I think we've done this so long.
You know, I mean, that's why these things fluctuate. Now, if we averaged a 70-cent tax rate, where would we be? You know, without changing it, or 63. But never one year did we go down in cost to the citizen.
And I guess I believe in that, and I told several people this. The issue with the gas tax was there was no inflation index with it. It was just a flat, and it didn't work. And I guess if we don't raise taxes, am I in favor of doing basically looking at the cost of inflation and making those adjustments in our tax rates and then raising taxes on that? Yes, I'm in favor of that, to be able to, because we have to be able to continue to function, and the cost of everything continues to go up, and that is something reality you have to address. But and so does that make sense what I'm saying? You know, when we do our reassessments, now if in the past, if I look back and we've been raising taxes the whole time and it's much higher than inflation, then I might not support that. But I would say that if we've been not raising taxes, we've been like Roanoke County $1.09, and then when the reassessment comes along, I'm in favor of making sure that we keep up with cost of inflation.
Go ahead.
No, sir.
When you talk about the $1.09, and I think we've been saying this a little bit, everybody in Roanoke County except the people in Benton pay $1.09.
Yes.
The only people in our county that pay $1.09 are those of us who live in Blacksburg.
Right.
Okay? The rest of the county either pays 89. I mean, they just might live right across the county line. They just pay 89.
Right.
And
Well, 87 right now.
Right,
Or
87.
87 right now.
I mean, 87, not 89. And they just lived over the line from me. And the thing is, and the people in Christiansburg maybe pay what?
They're at 11 right now, and
11,
there is a...
so they're not quite around $1. So it's not everybody, but in Roanoke County, everybody does pay $1.09, but they reassess every year. And my son told me the other day, or my daughter-in-law, that they pay $6,500 to live in Roanoke County. That's their taxes at $1.09, and that's in Southwest Roanoke. And then it doesn't matter if you live there or in Glenver or if you live on the other side, $1.09, and that's it.
And I will say this: look at, yes, they do get a lot of the services, but we're still spending more per child on our kids. They've got two different. They've got a fire department.
I have a question about that.
Sure.
Yeah.
Now I know you want to fold the school debt into this accounting, and if you took the school debt out, now we spend less per pupil, and that's the calculation initially made by the Roanoke Times way back when, which started this whole discussion. I'm curious. I mean, why do some of us, consider school debt service as part of cost per pupil, but we don't consider expenditures like on public safety, the public safety building or the jail, as folded into the sheriff's budget in some way in consideration? These are county buildings that need update and repair.
But they're not county buildings; they're school board buildings.
No.
But they serve the citizens of the county.
The schools are the school board buildings. These are things directly for the schools. And I guess when you start looking at it, it's housing the schools, it's housing the students, it's where it's functioning. They've been able to figure out a way, I guess, not to have to borrow as much. And they do
They can't borrow, right? I mean,
well, no,
I think the funding comes from
the funding comes from us, right? I mean, the school boards can't. Roanoke County. Yeah, because they have a $1 tax rate that allows them to maintain their money. And they have a larger capital reserve that can fund things like schools as well as public safety. I mean, there's one pot of money that they distribute to all county buildings.
It's just, if you remember, it's paid fire and rescue, 153. That's a 17-cent tax increase. If we added that to the $1.09, and then there we go. We start looking at, they have in Catawba, they have a garbage truck to come and pick up their garbage. They house cats in their animal control.
And we are spending $14 million in debt service because we did not spend money in the past, and the roof of one of our high schools fell in.
Well, now, do we blame the school boards? Or do we fire the engineers who didn't go in there and inspect it? Did we look what happened as a result of that?
It doesn't matter.
Well, no, but here's one of the things. I never saw the buck stop with anybody. I never saw somebody say, okay, we didn't inspect it. Now, after that, did they go and they made repairs to Christiansburg High School after the roof collapsed? Yes, that was done.
All the schools.
Both the auditorium was closed and the gym was closed for a period of time.
And Gilbert Lincoln was closed, and Harding Avenue was closed, and Shawsville Elementary. Every single school was inspected. We had to pay at one moment all this expenditures because, as Bill was saying, previous Board of Supervisors had not set aside money to allocate to the schools to fund maintenance.
I don't recall anybody coming before this board at any point in time and saying Blacksburg's roof is going to collapse, and Mary Biggs or Annette Perkins or Bill Brown or Jim Poletta saying, no, we don't care. I never heard that, and I don't believe it took place. I never heard anybody say that there was a structural problem with the roof. I never heard that anybody said that if it would have been replaced, that the outer roof that would have been replaced, it was a fundamental problem. If you look at different engineering reports with either the way the steel was and the way that the trusses were put on the walls, and that there wasn't a double weld. But now that's one.
I'm unclear how that makes the school roof not have fallen in.
Well,
I'm just not.
You're saying, hey, look, if we were to replace the roof, it still will have fallen in.
Yeah, the roof wasn't the problem. What the problem was was where the truss came to the uprights. It was not a permeable weld.
The roof was
Okay.
in poor construction that wasn't maintained
Right.
because the school
Well,
didn't have
maintenance didn't have a lot to
ongoing-
do with that. I don't believe. As I understand
It
it.
was called build
It was
as
called
cheaply as you
poor
can.
construction.
And back
It wasn't
then-
maintenance.
Yeah, and there was an oversight in the building
Yeah.
from the town. Remember,
And
they
this-
didn't have a town person that
I know
checked it.
The snow load and the wet and
The
the
roof
wind
collapsed.
is what twisted that.
It always was.
I
Let
don't
me
know how
tell
this-
you, they sunk big bucks into
Mm-hmm.
repairing that school down through the years. It seemed
Not
that
working.
every year something went wrong.
Yep.
There was a roof problem, and then they fixed that, maybe,
And crack in
and
the
then there
wall.
was another roof problem, and then there were the stairs problems. They have spent oodles of money trying to repair, and it's us too, trying to repair defects that were in that building all the time it was there. But they did it as cheaply as they could. And there were some defects that they couldn't see, that they couldn't get to. For instance, those things in the auditorium, they had to go back in there and inspect those before they could realize that they were bad off. But they did spend money trying to repair it, and it seemed like every year there was something wrong in that building, and they had to do something to
The
it.
welds, the reason I
But
mentioned the
not
Christian.
enough to keep the roof of all.
Right, and the reason I mentioned the welds, Matt, and they had to close the auditorium because they had to do the welding, not just the inspection, but they had to close it because the similar issue was, as I understand it, Christiansburg Auditorium as well as Christiansburg Gymnasium. They had to close them for safety issues until they could do that additional welding to make it safe.
Let me add this.
And that's my understanding of why they closed it. I did not see a report on that.
Now, I hope this board chair that probably 8 or 10 years down the road, whoever's the board, whoever's on here says, those were some pretty forward-thinking people. Instead of us sitting here, if the board had done this 25, 30 years ago, we wouldn't be in this shape. And probably we wouldn't be having this much of a debate if the roof hadn't collapsed. That was the catalyst that caused the spike last year. And then we are a little bit, when I look at it, it says, oh, something's going to happen down the road. We're going to have to address Christiansburg. Let's be wise and put 2 pennies aside to start addressing it. And I hate to see the 2 cents. I mean, I hate it like anything else. But as thinking with my heart, people, a 2 cent more hit on some of the people that I know is kind of rough. But then you think with your head and says, how can we make the most appropriate decision as a group? I know all of us are not going to agree,
Right.
but let's be a forward-thinking board and know something that's going. We're not living just for this year. We know something's going to happen down the road. Well, we never know whether all the citizens in the Christiansburg Strand flood this building, demand a new school, just like all the citizens from Ryland, Blacksburg. I mean, they can say, hey,
But there's one of those things, and I guess I would stand up and, oh, sorry.
We've got I don't know how much longer we want to carry this on.
Get off the hot seat at any
Kind of
point in time,
rehashing, and Ms. Edmonds got some things that,
I'm perfectly willing to get off the hot seat.
okay.
thank you, Chris. Thank you for your work, buddy.
Thank you, Chris.
Appreciate you.
A couple of other items for the work session. Carol's got some information that we wanted to share with you, and I believe Angie has some information as well. So we wanted to give you the opportunity to hear from them, and then I know there's going to be plenty of other discussion that you want to have. So, ladies,
You guys will be all like Chris that took all the heat.
No, he didn't take the heat.
I know
We
he
were
did.
just checking.
I'm just kidding.
Could I see that powwow, please?
Absolutely.
I did want to say one thing, Chris. We have, in the late 70s, if we weren't at 1,200, we were close to it.
1240 is what it says here.
Yeah, it was in the late 70s. Yeah, in the late 70s. There were a lot. 78.
That's my family members, they'll want that back.
Oh, can I read all this? Oh, my goodness.
I want to see a
Well, I
picture.
know Philip, and I know Sherry, and I know all those people.
All right, Ms. Edmonds, how are you this evening?
Okay. We have several charts to go over with you tonight to give you some more things to think about in terms of what's in the proposed or the advertised budget. And we're going to start out talking a little bit about the health insurance, and Angie's going to go over how we came up with that savings. From there, I'm going to talk a little bit about your overall dollars and then some more options or some framework for some options you may want to consider. These charts are in your Dropbox. They're under budget 4.8, I think, and I'm sorry I didn't get them earlier. We were working, or I was working on mine at least, right up to the very end. So they are there, but we didn't get them to you much earlier. Also, paper copies are up at your place of each one of those. So I'm going to sit down and let Angie go over the insurance chart, and then we'll move on from there about some other options.
The top part of this chart is something that we passed out when the consultant came and spoke with us earlier. After that meeting and we had direction about moving forward with the self-insurance option, the consultant went back to Anthem and negotiated with them further. And you might recall that there was discussion about some large claims, whether they should be included in our experience or not when we were figuring out what the rate should be. After he talked with Anthem some more, they agreed that they would pull some of that out of what they were charging us for the stop loss coverage. You might remember that's the amount of insurance that we would have for large claims over $90,000, or to keep our claims from going over a certain dollar amount in total to give us a worst case scenario. So if you look at the second part of your chart, it shows that the lower stop loss premium saved us about $134,000, which brings the premium down to $301. We had not talked about dental dollars at that time, what the change in the dental rates would be. That's going to add approximately $9,000 for a small rate increase for dental. And then under this option, we would have to incur some cost for the consultant to help us continue to establish rates as we go forward and that kind of thing under this health insurance plan. That gives us a total cost of $323,210. And as we were talking about earlier, the total set aside in the budget was $625,000. So that frees up $301,790 to be used for something else or handled a different way.
Got it.
And I do want to thank the board again for your leadership on that, and I appreciate Chris's comments about the consultant. We wanted to make that we talked to you guys back in the fall about self-insurance and really thought that would be a good option. At the time, we weren't sure that we had the time to be able to pull it all together, but once we did the renewal information, we realized that was certainly something we should pursue, and certainly want to thank staff for all the work they put into this as well.
Okay, this next chart, and as I said, I was working on it up to the last moment, and when you do that, you make a mistake. Well, the first thing I need to point out is the increase in the 4% car tax rental needs to be struck from that list. Okay, just keep that in mind. The purpose of this chart is just to show the available dollars. We usually go back at this point in time and identify any additional revenue or other dollars that would be included or added to before you adopt the final budget. Angie just told you about the health insurance contingency. The net of any other dollar changes is $1,500, so there's a total to be allocated or set aside of $303,290,000. There's additional state revenue from the General Assembly for schools. The total of that is $84,267. And one thing I wanted to point out, the school staff brought to our attention a correction that will be need to be made in the school budget. This has no impact on totals at all. It's a correction.
It's a wash on both sides.
There is a reduction built in for Title I,
and they put it on the expense side. It should have been on the revenue side. So in order to make that correction work, you have to have two offsetting adjustments. And I only bring that up so that you're aware of it in the event you see those numbers or that change somewhere in the course of the school budget. It's a net zero effect.
Because if I remember right, their budget had a sequestration aspect to it of $350,000, which
352,068. Right.
Okay, so that was in their budget, but this correction needed to be made
to change it from an increased expense to a reduced revenue.
Okay, I got it.
It's just on the wrong side. It's still a loss, it's just on the wrong side of where it was shown.
I'm sorry, it's 950. I'm a little slow. Sorry.
I know, but you remembered it. Okay. The last thing is we generally set out some options as ways to think about some things that are in the budget, some things you may want to do, you may not want to do, you may want to regroup. You've certainly heard Supervisor Tuck's presentation in terms of his thoughts on what you may want to discuss or do going forward. All this does, and it is solely for the purpose of illustration. Certainly doesn't recommend A, B, or C, but just looks at reducing taxes, leaving the tax rates the same, or some combination of that. And there are any number of options between there, should you so choose to fund different things, to not fund some things, or to reallocate money. So let me just run through quickly, since it is late, how you may want to think about going forward before you adopt the final budget. If you wanted to defer tax increases, deferring 5 cents, and I say defer because you just wouldn't be doing it this year, but probably in another year you would be required to raise taxes, or you would want to raise these taxes and do similar things as is in the proposed budget. But reducing the personal property tax increase by 5 cents would cost $284,750. Remember, you have the 303, if I can find my paper here, 303,290. Well, in order to reduce the personal property tax 5 cents, that would take $284,750 of that amount. If you wanted to remove the increase in real estate, that's $1.4 million. That would leave your real estate rate at 0 and your personal property tax increase at 5 cents. Because you've used the majority of that, you would have available to allocate to some other sources $18,540. Now what you do is you defer the savings in debt service capacity and reoccurring dollars for school capital. That was what was proposed to you and what was advertised. You would not be doing that, you'd be deferring it. But there would be no increase in real estate and there would be a reduced personal property rate. That's one end of the spectrum. The other end of the spectrum could be taking the available dollars from largely your health insurance savings and allocating those to some different items that are not included in the advertised budget. This leaves the real estate tax increase at 2 cents and the personal property tax increase at 10 cents. Now, this list of increased funding comes from items that have been mentioned during the public hearing and by board members as wanting to be included. So they're listed here for your consideration. Offsetting the dependent care health insurance increase will cost $48,000, and that's not only just to people who subscribe to the family plan, that's any increase in all dependent care, spouse, employee with children, and the family plan. You would use some of the savings in health insurance to offset that cost. It's not a 17% increase any longer because that amount was reduced to even less. So the estimated cost to cover that's $48,000. Spay-neuter clinic, if you wanted to fund that, $30,000 would continue the program for spaying and neutering cats for another year. I've heard it mentioned by several members about wanting to include maybe $2,000 for the Human Relations Council. That was funded previously, but for a number of years, they have not requested any funds, and that would add them back to the budget. The Christiansburg Institute, you heard from them in terms of their request. You could add that in. We had made a mistake. I know it's hard to imagine, but we made a mistake in the voting machine funding. We looked at the request and thought it asked for a third of that amount, so we put in a third of the amount. But the issue was the request was the third in order to be able to replace voting machines over a 3-year period preparing for the upcoming presidential election. So in order to correct that error, it would be a $52,000 cost. The total added to operating would be $137,000, and that would leave $166,290 available to fund other items, however the board may choose. By doing this, you could fund the items listed, and we correct the error in the voting machine funding. Now, if you leave the real estate tax increase in place, you will generate a windfall of $700,000. Of that, you could add that money to the capital projects fund. You could use it for one-time costs. Either one. Now, in option C, it's just a combination somewhere in the middle between the two ends. You could reduce 2 cents of the personal property tax increase. That would cost $113,900. You leave real estate at 2 cents. Personal property increase would be 8 cents. And again, the items you may want to consider funding offset the dependent care health insurance increase, the spay-neuter clinic, the Human Relations Council, the Christiansburg Institute, correct the voting machine funding, and maybe you want to consider reallocating 1 cent of the 2 cents in real estate to the school operating fund. Should you choose to do that, I mean, that certainly is a choice you can make. Now, what you would not be doing is putting it away in savings and having those ongoing dollars for later on down the road. You also still generate the windfall of $700,000, which again you could allocate to school capital or use to pay some one-time costs. So, again, this is only for the purposes of illustration to show you there's a continuum here of a lot of choices you can make. You can choose to reduce taxes to reallocate some of the dollars from where they are in the advertised budget, and you can choose to add additional things that were not included in the proposed budget. So with that said, I can see everybody is probably really tired and heard more options than they want to know anything about. But I'll be glad to try and address any questions if you have some for me.
That's fine.
I think, what is it, next year is an assessment year? So we have reassessment next year?
It'll be in
Let's see,
effect.
11 and 4 is 15. It goes on the books January 15.
Oh, okay.
Is that right? 11, 4, 15.
Yes.
Okay.
I guess it's built into this budget for, I guess, I mean, at the assessment, a fee, you know, are you going to use that one-time monies to pay for assessors or something?
Did we not set aside some of the one-time money?
We set aside 600.
Yes.
Yeah, we did set aside.
Yes.
So we're good. We're good there.
Well,
Okay.
and one thing that Supervisor Perkins and I were talking about at the break, there is a request that has not come before the board yet for allocating about an additional $100,000 for office space and whatnot for getting reassessed. We don't have a place to put reassessment. We've got to have a place to put them and get them set up.
Junction Street.
There- and there's-
Bring a tent.
That's correct. The $600,000 just covered the contract for the reassessment firm. We didn't know at the time when we did that what possible cost it was going to be for space, and there's cost for the Board of Equalization who we pay. There's other costs that go with that, and we're carrying about a $100,000 estimate right now. But yes, you had dollars that were unallocated to reserves or to anywhere, and those are set aside to cover reassessment.
I'd like to, in these lists that we're looking at, increased funding, I mean, I know we got Human Relations Council, Christiansburg Institute, Correct Voting Machines, but I think there was a request for $2,000 from the New River Highland.
3,000.
3,000?
RCND.
Yeah, RCMD. From, we have a representative. Jim, you don't know it, but you're the representative. I've been up there, right there. But I'd like to see that $3,000 added on this
That Mr.
list.
Shorter
Yeah,
sent us
Mr.
a note
Shorter.
about.
So when we, in option B and option C, while we're looking at it, that $3,000 be.
Can somebody clarify what the New River Highlands?
What was the 3,000 for?
Conservation Council is or does? I know they do something, but
Yeah, they do something because I was a representative for a year or 2 years, and it's like a streams management. They help the farmers and so forth with pasture, and I know it's people in that thing from Tazewell, from all over the region that you come through, and they have they do a lot with, I guess, some extension with tech and everything. But I know it didn't answer your questions because I had a notebook about that thick, and they do pretty important work. I'll put it that way.
It's very technical.
The email
And New River
said,
Short is our representative.
from Chuck was talking about the fact that
RCND.
even though they
RCND,
weren't
yeah.
funded, that they still continue to do work in Montgomery County. And it says we have a 15,000 Firewise project underway as we speak and continue with the grazing project. We need the 3,000 for our support staff. The other funds come mainly from grants. I would
Yeah, they do a
ask
lot of
that you
grant money.
share this letter with members of the Montgomery County Board of Supervisors. And that's coming from Chuck, and those of us that know Chuck know that he wouldn't be, well, this is my personal opinion. I don't think he would be asking for this money unless it was needed, because he's very conservative with money.
Yeah.
And so it sounds like even though we didn't fund them last year, they continued their work in Montgomery County.
A whole lot of other localities
And then we
kick in
funded them
funds
about
too.
Yeah, it's
$1,000
RCND.
last year.
Yeah.
700.
And I know it came up last year a little bit, and we didn't fund it. If we could get a better idea of what they do, and then, I understood what Christiansburg Institute does and what we want to do there. I just don't know enough.
I think we probably can get Mr.
Yeah,
Short.
why don't we get
here
Mr. Short to
at the
explain
next
it?
meeting.
I was on that board for 2 or 3 years, many years ago, and I didn't have a clue what they were talking about.
It's RCND.
But Chuck,
And Bill was on it for 2 years. Yeah, I guess I'm on it again. And I haven't been to a meeting yet because I haven't been available
The
at the time
conflict,
they
I
meet.
mean, you have so much.
Yeah.
The board has been funding them $700, and there's currently that contribution. What they've asked for is an increase in that amount, as Ms. Biggs said, for their support staff. I think they use the staff to prepare and submit a variety of grants, and they have a large service area, I believe. It's a number of counties, so that when they split out that cost among so many counties, that's why it's such a small amount, and it's gone up, or they're making that request to cover it now because they've lost some state and federal funds. So.
maybe we could just get, I think for Chris and I, probably just because we're still kind of newbies, is that if we could just get a statement on what they do. I mean, that's all. I mean, nobody doubts that. I'm sure they do important stuff.
I'm sure
every request does important stuff. So
I'm sure that, I gave it up, Jim gave it up, and we'll let you be out representing. I'm just kidding.
I'm not volunteering.
We will definitely fund you
Well,
a
they have a
statement of
good
what they
picnic
do.
once a year. Had a great fish fry.
Bridges and roadways and
It's very, very technical what they do, and I don't,
it's resource conservation and development, but it's got another name now.
yeah.
You sound like you've been
New
to
River Highlands.
I've been to those meetings.
Yeah.
It was resource conservation and development, and then I think they've changed it to Department of Natural Resources, something
Something like that, yeah.
different. I don't know what, but it's got a different name.
I think I maybe know what they do, but I'm not going to hazard a guess without reading it.
That's fine, yeah. I have one question and then two comments. My question is that we also received a request from the registrar about making an assistant registrar who is currently part-time into a full-time position. I was wondering, I would like to get a little bit more information on this. Mr. Wertz's letter is certainly worth considering, but what I would specifically like to know is, would this assistant registrar being made permanent address some of the issues that I brought to the attention, that were brought to me by constituents about the voting issues in the county in 2012? And if so, how they would address those issues? Because then I would be, if he could demonstrate that, I would be happy to consider that request. But the way that this is worded, I just don't really know what this person will do, and so I don't feel that I have enough information. So perhaps a letter back to Mr. Wertz.
I'll be glad to send him an email tomorrow and ask him to provide additional information.
That would be fine.
Okay.
And then my two comments are these, and they have to do with two numbers, one of which is on the previous slide that Carol has there, and that's the $352,000 and 88, is it 88 or 68?
68.
68. And I've been talking about this the whole time through the budget. That is a sequestration cut to Title I funds. Title I funds fund things like reading specialists in 4 school districts. In Montgomery County, that affects 7 schools, 7 schools: Auburn Elementary, Bellevue Elementary, Christiansburg Primary, Christiansburg Elementary, Eastern Montgomery Elementary, Falling Branch Elementary, and Prices Fork Elementary. These are none of my schools in my district or anything like that, none of the schools in Mary's district, none of the schools in Annette's district. That's a cut, a federal cut that will directly affect poor kids in this county. And the fact that we're not doing something to cover this is really worrying me and troubling. So if we can find a little bit maybe from this $300,000 or something like that to put towards that, to help the school board cover that so that these reading specialists don't have to be let go, I would be much happier with that. The second number is a bigger number, and it's one that scares me a little bit, and that's $230 million. $230 million is the estimated capital needs for Montgomery County over the next 10 to 15 years. And that is based upon, most of it is school capital needs, but there's also $20 million in ongoing county capital needs that we know about. $10 million of that is the estimated ongoing everyday maintenance required for existing school buildings over the next 5 years. $2 million a year over the next 5 years, $10 million. That would be needed to add to the budget each year just to keep up the facilities we have. And then, in addition to that, $200 million in potential new buildings or even renovations of existing buildings just to make sure that we can continue to serve these needs. And so when I look at that $230 million and I look at that 1.4 that we're putting away, I don't think it's enough, but at least it's something. And it needs to be something, because even if we put it off a year, as Mr. Brown said a little while ago, that's $1.4 million we're down going into this, and we already know we're $230 million in the hole, and we need to figure out a way that we need to pay for that.
Anybody else?
Well, I agree with, I guess because I've been here for so long and watched everything even before that, I think I've said it over and over again, that our people and our buildings, both, they're investments. Both of them serve our citizens, and the part that happened with, basically, we were never ever gave the schools this goes back now, the money they needed to really maintain the schools. Things were just done like on a shoestring budget on both sides of the aisle. And we did lower the tax rate after reassessment. We didn't plan for the future, and we weren't proactive. And I think I stated earlier, there were those of us that didn't agree with that, but I think we're to the point in our county where we've seen, and like someone said earlier, that roof falling in was the whole callus. I mean, we can't do that anymore. This county is growing. It's hard to compare it to Roanoke County because Montgomery County, as we've stated before, is such, I can't think really of another county like this, where you have the two large towns, you have the county, and you have all this land that's not taxable. And you have these needs, and it's going to continue to grow. So the county is responsible for things that the towns are not. And so to think into the future, I think, is a good thing. I would like to even see it go further, and I think this has been brought up a number of times, that there are some localities where the schools and the county work all during the year together on a budget and together on, if new monies come in, this is what goes to schools, this is what goes to county, and you can sort of actually even plan in a little bit more proactive way. I don't think we're there yet, but I know there's some counties and localities that do that. So I personally think, the money, putting the 2 cents in, I think that's a good thing. I also think that I would like to see more money somehow be able to go over to the operations of the schools because they're still short. So I'm not sure how I'm sort of looking at both of these, option B and option C here. I like the things I see that we need to put some money forward to that have been listed here. I support that. So those are just sort of my thoughts at this point on what we're doing. I mean, when I got on this board, I'm going to tell you, the rain came in the roofs. Okay? There was no roof maintenance fund. It's like you put the roof on a building that's supposed to last, 200 years. So, I mean, we've come a long way, but we got a long way to go.
Okay, anybody else?
Well,
Go ahead.
I'm fine with the 2 cents, putting it as a savings account, but I really would like to find 1.4 million, which is what the 2 cents is, to put in the operating budget. Because I would like not only to have the staff, teachers, everybody, and have the good raise, but also have that money that they're down, 1.4 million. I know if you ask the superintendent, she's going to tell you that she's 10 million. She has $10 million less from the state right now than they did in 2008. Now, what is that, 4 years? Mm-hmm. And they've gone down $10 million. And we've had to make up. Plus, we have a building program. And Matt's right, we didn't do anything for 20 years. Mm-hmm. We had no building program. We didn't do very much to, in the way of maintenance, except Blacksburg High School almost every year had to have something done to it. And so I don't know where it would come from. I don't know what we would do, and I know it would add to the rollover budget. There's no doubt about it. And I know that we've tried to tell people that the 2 cents is a forward-looking deal, that we will save it for one-time expenses, capital expenses, or whatever we need to do, a building program, reduce the debt, who knows what that might go for, but primarily capital needs in the school system and not in the county. Otherwise, the county has done pretty well in terms of what it needs, but the county needs some things too, as well as the school system.
We have a list also.
Yeah, you do. You have a list. So, but I still think that considering all the staff people have not had raises for how many years? 4 or 5 years? That this will be the first time?
For the schools?
The schools.
I think so, yes.
And the county people have had a raise when? Last year?
Last year.
They got a raise last year, and we're trying to work on that now to see what we need to do. And I just, I'm really concerned, and like I said one time before, sometime before I ever get off this board, I would love to see us really fund the schools the way they ought to be funded. I don't know how. I'm not a genius with money, but I do understand about where we are and what we're doing. And to me, it's weighing off the future, which I know is easier to sell, the 2 cents for savings account, than it is 2 cents into the budget for the operating expenses. But I think that somewhere out there, I'd like to work out some kind of way that those operating expenses could be boosted, and I don't know exactly how you do that. But I also know that there are other departments. I'm talking about Sheriff's Department, the people that work there. How long has it been since they really had a raise?
They're on the county.
They did.
Yeah, see, they're on the county plan.
I know, they're on the county plan, but still. I know that those people work very hard and for the money that they do get. So, anyway, that's just what I'm saying. I have a really strong feeling and yearning for trying to figure out how more money could be given to the school operating budget without it creating a problem.
Real quickly, I believe we as a board have identified some problems and concerns. And you cited some of them, Mary, all of them cited some. But as a board, we cannot fix them overnight. We'd like to fix them, but if we chip away at them a little bit and start making some progress, I see the 1.4 million set aside. I see us moving some of the surplus property, adding to that fund. I see 109 growing out there, generating some tax revenue. I even see in the future that OBMS property will generate some tax revenue in the future, and with some growth and things like that. So I believe down the road, the next 2 or 3 years, we'll be able to start addressing some of those things. Probably not as largely as we'd like to, but to be able to address them.
But those schools, I know we can take some money away, but we have to remember that all the money that we get from selling the schools can only be used for school construction and or debt service, and that's it.
A good thing.
Cannot be used, but if we have that for that, then maybe we can ease up some money for operations. And I agree. I think there's some things coming down the road. However, it's very difficult to say to people, wait, it's going to be better 2 and 3 years from now. And it's hard to say to taxpayers, this is what we need to do. We're going to have to collect more money from you. So I'm not sure exactly how all that works, but like I say, I think there needs to be more money in the operating budget at some point in
During all
time.
this conversation.
I had two things too. When Matt was talking about the sequestration money with the reading teachers, I guess that issue, has that come up at the liaison meeting about how they might handle that? And the other issue that I don't know how this slipped my mind, I'm really concerned about school safety, because I know that people have been going through the schools to evaluate the schools and the safety of the schools, and I know that things are going to have to change within the schools, and those changes are going to cost money, and none of that's been talked about. And so I'm glad that we do have some leftover one-time money, because that might be where some of it ends up. Because these are real issues about school security that will probably need to be addressed, and I'm thinking, within the next year. I'm sort of surprised we haven't heard a price tag yet, but there's some real issues there, especially with the older schools.
Sure.
So.
Well, I know with regard to sequestration, and Supervisor Gabriel May can speak to this, I know that I was trying to dig back through to see if I found it. At one point, the superintendent did put together kind of a contingency plan that if the full amount, if the full 3.6 wasn't funded, that there would be some things that came off. And
She's supposed to present it next meeting, I believe.
Okay.
Well, yeah, she didn't say anything about it last meeting. Their budget update was just
still waiting.
Working on it, and they were going to present something next meeting, which I guess will be after we vote on the tax rate and the budget on Monday.
Yeah, she's not discussed any of that.
And one of the things that they do have the savings, and as I said at one of our meetings with the public, they made the decision, and I know it was a difficult decision, to save about $1.2 million with the block scheduling, and that's a big savings. Sometimes the necessity requires that type of outside-the-box thinking, and I think that the school board, I've criticized them at times, and I've tried to praise them at times when I feel like that they've done some things that I agree with, and so I just wanted to point that out, that they have done that, and that's about $1.2 million off of the, it started off at 4.2, that's 1 point in my mind, but then they've got the $600,000 from the state to get 3.6, and then we're giving them $2.2 million.
Okay, anybody else?
No, just to follow up on Supervisor Perkins' comments, and she and I have talked some, and I've talked to Supervisor Biggs as well. The 2-cent tax increases I mentioned in the budget message was to set aside for future capital concerns, knowing that that we're going to have some pretty significant needs, as Supervisor Gabriel pointed out, and specifically school needs, although we did have some conversation about county needs as well. The county does still have some reserve monies that are, or monies that could be designated from reserves for one-time uses. As I mentioned in an email to several of you, the 1.4 million, and Carol mentioned it in the option C that she had there. Part of that money could be put into operations for the schools, but it does not allow for continuing monies to be set aside also for capital. You would have to do that on an annual basis based on whatever you may have at the end of the year. And we talked about that quite a bit as staff developed the budget. The biggest concern that I saw, recognizing the schools have a challenge and will continue to have a challenge there, but the biggest concern that I saw was the millions of dollars that I know that this board's going to be requested over the next decade for upgrading schools, construction of schools, and the concern that if we don't start trying to plan for that, then the boards in the future are going to have some tough decisions. Even though we got through it fairly well last year, I've never in my career recommended a 12-cent tax increase, and I would like to never in my career have to do that ever again. But of that 12 cents last year, 10 of that was to address immediate capital things that we had to address. I don't ever want to see, if there's a way to avoid it, this board ever put in that situation again. And that was the reason for the 2
I
cents.
don't either. I really don't ever want us to have to do something like that, and I don't think we will. But it just depends on what I foresee is any monies that we have left, and we've been talking about 3.4 million. Then that should go into a capital reserve fund along with whatever else we have. If that's the money that's there and it's a one-time, to be used for one-time things. And I just wonder, I don't know, the 2 cents will be reoccurring every year, and so that will be also very helpful for what we have. It seems that, to me, that every year that whatever windfall comes, it really ought, if we know we're going to have to make those kinds of expenditures, then that needs to go into a capital fund. Then if there's excess over expenditures, that's a different ballgame. But I just, I don't know, I guess I'm concerned because I'm concerned about the reading, and I'm hoping that sequestration will go away. I'm also worried about school safety, which she mentioned. There are a lot of things that are out there that are exceedingly important, and I don't say schools are the only thing that's important, but I'd say it's the biggest thing that we do have to worry about at this point. But we also, of course, have to think about our own employees and our own needs as a county. And I understand that, but I can't imagine that these children are going to lose their reading because of sequestration. People don't think that's important. We're losing Head Start because people think that's not important. So, I don't know. But I'm just saying it's a desire of mine to try to figure out a way to do that, and at the same time have money set aside for capital needs. But if it's 3.4 million out there, then I think we ought to be looking at, well, where can we save that for capital needs or whatever.
Over the years, we've gotten so far behind. I mean, I said over the years, this county has gotten, I mean, if you look at it this way, so deep in the hole over many years, even with employee compensation and different things like that. It's just keep trying to do more and more with less, not do anything. And it got to the point, I think this board says, hey, we're tired of digging down deeper. Let's start working our way out. And that's basically what we're trying to do.
And I think that's exceedingly important. I really do. Okay, is it time to go home?
No, we got several things we got to do.
Mr. Gabriel?
Let's go out of work session.
If it was all right, I was going to make a motion to go out of work session.
That's a perfect suggestion.
Second.
That was my next question.
Go out of work session?
Yeah.
Amen.
Moved and seconded. Roll call, please.
Ms. Perkins? Aye. Mr. Brown?
Somebody wake me up.
Aye. Mr. Todd?
Aye.
Mr. Gabriel?
Aye.
Chair Palettis?
Aye.
6 ayes.
All right, the next item on the agenda is County Attorney's Report.
No report, Mr. Chair.
County Administrator's Report.
I don't have anything to add this evening, other than just reminding you that we have our meeting to vote on the tax rate and the budget next Monday at 6 o'clock. 6 o'clock, right? Okay. It's been a long night. And if you have any questions during the week that we can follow up on, I know that I have loaded your email boxes up over the last couple of days, and I apologize, but I'm trying to make sure that everybody has the same information and that you have as good of information as we have. So let us know what we can do to help.
Supervisor Gabriel.
About 200 million.
I recognize the sheriff.
Well, do you mind?
No, go ahead.
I just want to step up and say to these board members, you're sitting up here being yourself to step up on an issue that you absolutely have no control over. We all know that. I realize that as sheriff, and I know the superintendent realizes that you as board members realize it in the position in which you sit because of the lack of reimbursement by the state for the services that were mandated to provide to the citizens of this county. And that's what's continually driving our local costs up, but every one of us recognize that. And we all carry a heavy burden. And it hurts me to have to come before this board and ask for more and more and more, year in and year out. And it's simply because they're reducing the reimbursement to the localities for the service that they mandate we provide to the citizens.
Absolutely.
And it's just that plain and simple. And it all drops right back onto this board, which has to pass it down to our local taxpayers. Now tell me, the Commonwealth of Virginia and the United States of America, what do we receive for the state income tax and FICA and the whole 9 yards that we pay to the federal government? And what do we pay? What do we get back from the Commonwealth of Virginia? In services that continue to cut the localities.
Yep.
And mandates.
Mine's been cut by over 80-some% just since I've been in office.
How much?
Well, we've been reimbursed about 80% when Doug was in office, and we're about 34, 36% reimbursement now from the state. And pretty much the state's paying our salaries at the compensation board rate, not the county rate. Starting deputy sheriff for the compensation board is $28,200. That's what I think Pulaski's getting, and a lot of the other counties around us are getting, starting out for deputy sheriff. I can compete for dispatchers, much less deputy sheriffs at that position, at that pay grade. So I know I'm eating up a lot of your time tonight.
No.
I did want to step up and say, I appreciate everything that you do.
Thank you.
But don't beat yourself up over it. It's not all your fault. It's not all your fault. It's a higher level than everyone else. Everyone from federal government to state government to local government has been mentioned.
I know.
But what a statement that makes as far as Virginia's commitment to public safety. What a statement that makes to
What the
pay
statement doesn't
somebody
make?
$28,000 to put their life on the line every single day.
Well,
What a statement that makes.
the deputy sheriffs that lost their lives 2 years ago down in Florida, Southwest Virginia were at $28,200. So, and you know, the line of duty death benefits have fallen back on the local governing bodies, whole 9 yards, VRS payments. So, you don't know it better than I do. You see it. I just have to come and say, and I try to work around the same with Mr. Maddow so that it's not picked up.
We are glad that you understand.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, just some sheriffs, I guess they don't understand. They don't have the experience that you have, and they get elected, and they think the board can do everything. I mean, it's a good friend of mine, the sheriff in Bedford, before that county wanted them to fund 15 school resource officers. Sheriff Brown?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm saying like, I can't believe that. But he went before the Board of Supervisors, wanted them to fund 15 school resource officers in the county of Bedford.
I don't know exactly how Bedford County schools work. I don't know whether there's any cities in the county of Bedford.
These are county schools, sir. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I know that there's federal money being made available for elementary school resource officers. However, it is far lacking in enough money to provide them across the Commonwealth. You'll probably see a request from me for those school resource officers. However, I don't, in my wildest dream, think they'll be funded or we'll get any. But if we do, we do. But I'll make that request on behalf of the county schools in the outlying areas of the two towns, because we do have police departments, and they do provide resource officers to the schools in Blacksburg and Christiansburg, and they will have to go through the same process I go through. And brought to, I'm sorry.
Thank you, Sheriff, very much.
Thank you.
Mr. Gabriel.
Just a few very quick things. I was wondering if I could, Mr. Meadows, if I could get an update on the status of the video projectors.
Ms. Ritchie, would you, I'm going to toss that ball because Ruth has been living with that issue for a month.
Yeah.
Well, we've got we're waiting on people to come fix it.
2 new projectors will be installed tomorrow evening, so they should be ready to go by hopefully your next meeting on Monday night.
Would you please add to that we've been working on that for weeks? It's been the contractor that's been the holdup because...
Well, that's true. We've been working on it ever since this projector went out, and as they came in trouble, shot the problem, they found out that we had a distribution amplifier that also needs replacing, and that will be done as well.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So, thanks for your patience.
That answers my question.
Thanks.
Thank you very much. Second thing, something I've been meaning to mention. I was just wondering. So we receive our agendas and stuff like that through Dropbox. I was wondering if perhaps we might be able to, within the amount of money that we normally set aside for Board of Supervisors, is to fund an expanded version of Dropbox so that we can have old stuff on there as well as the new stuff, so that we don't have to continue to delete stuff. And part of the issue is that when, at least the way I do it, and I know some of you might do the same, is when you tap on something, you download it to your iPad, and then you have it on your iPad. But if you're working on another computer, later on that file might be deleted, and you might not be able to access it when you're trying to look for something. And if we could just kind of keep, and it could be just 6 months or a year or something like that. I mean, we're not going to be able to keep everything all the time on there. And the plans are not expensive. We're talking a couple $100 maybe for the year.
We can look into that.
It's not a big deal, but I wanted to just bring that to the attention.
Yeah, we used to be able to archive several meetings at a time and do it.
We're
Same
doing,
thing with the PSA.
We've been doing it on the cheap, and we've not paid for any extra storage, but we'll certainly get some pricing options and see what we can do.
On the cheap.
Yeah.
Okay. Supervisor, is that it?
I have one more thing, but do you have a question?
For me, I got a stack of the budgets from last year, and it would have been very helpful to have had it on Dropbox, roughly a year's worth. And
I think so.
I was somebody who did not want to use an iPad, I wanted to do everything paper. Then I realized the work, I watched Vicki and some of the other staff putting together our packets and thought, okay, I need to be a man and use this. It is a great benefit, and it keeps our costs down dramatically as far as paper and staff time. So as long as the cost is a relatively nominal fee, to me it would be worth it, especially if we could do it like a 12 months to 14 months to be able to look back on the previous year's budget would be helpful.
Yeah.
The final thing I had, and I think I know the answer to this, and so I just want this out there and clarified for anybody who's watching at home, is the young woman who came and spoke about the fallen branch issue. What is our role in regards to falling branch? Now, it is my understanding that park and ride lot where Megabus stops and where that is VDOT land.
That's correct.
The school itself is in the town of Christiansburg.
That's correct.
Okay. The school is operated by the school board.
That's correct.
So we have no relation to anything that's going on other than to offer help where it is specifically requested and where we can operate. Is that correct?
That is a correct statement.
Okay. I would ask the chair. I was reading the News Messenger, and I was very surprised when I was reading the News Messenger this past weekend on Saturday about the most recent Town of Christiansburg meeting in which we were being blamed for holding up the process of this being fixed. And so I was wondering if perhaps in the next town-county liaison meeting, Mr. Place might mention something to Mayor Ballinger, just to make sure. It's probably just a misunderstanding. I'm sure it's just a misunderstanding. But perhaps something could be mentioned so that we can clarify that we're happy to help where we can, but this is really an issue that needs to be dealt with VDOT and not something that we can actually engage in. So, and that's all I have.
I guess we'll have something, huh?
I gotta have one of those.
Yes, sir.
I can't hear. What is he talking
Thank you very much, Matt.
there? Gotta get it.
That's all something.
Supervisor Perkins.
Okay, it's my turn. I do have something to ask about. Number one, I cannot get any of my PSA stuff in a Dropbox. It's not there, it's gone. So somebody needs to fix that for me. Number two, when are we going to be meeting with the League of Women Voters? Or are we?
You're meeting with the League of Women Voters, and I know this
Right.
because I gave you the wrong date in an earlier email today. On Tuesday, the 23rd, is at 7 o'clock.
Tuesday, the
3rd at
Third.
7 o'clock
At 7 o'clock.
at Lucy Monroe's. And the reason I know that, it was on the cover of their newsletter today, which triggered a series of questions to Vicki. but
23rd of April?
Well, that's
Yes,
what I
ma'am.
thought,
Yes, sir.
and that's what I
I thought
had.
it was May 9th. Go ahead, you know when it is.
That's what I had in my calendar book, and I just wanted to be sure.
Well,
And
I
where-
sent you an earlier email today to remind you that was the school board joint meeting, but that one got moved to Tuesday, May 14th. I believe that's right. Yes.
There was something else I wanted to ask. Gone out of my head right this moment. If I think about it, I'll
Come back in.
I'm sorry. I had a third thing. I don't know why I didn't write it down. Thank you very much.
Supervisor Brown.
Oh,
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
no, go ahead. I'll do it later.
You do it later. Well, all I'm going to say is I'm going to yield my time to the lady on my left.
I do not have anything to report.
Whoa.
So there you go.
One of the things Matt had talked about was the park and ride. It is actually the land on the park and ride is in the county, as I understand it.
The park and ride lot is owned and maintained by VDOT, which is on VDOT right-of-way that was obtained for the 118 interchange, and the lot is in Montgomery County. The school is in the town of Christiansburg.
One of the things that I would like to see this board try to look at, and I've been thinking about an idea. It's my understanding is that there's a portion that VDOT owns of land that is basically across from the old Moore's building next to where Highland Volkswagen used to be.
Yeah.
We know that the state police want to put a temporary, or not a temporary, but a small headquarters. We know that the parking lot has been highly successful. Our citizens are utilizing it. And that maybe jointly with the town of Christiansburg and VDOT and the state police, that maybe we could work out an answer where we utilize that piece of property. It benefits all of our citizens. You'd have the state police there, so it would cut down on crime and issues like that. It would be far enough away from when the megabus is letting out. But it's something to talk about in the future about all of us working together. Now, I don't have a plat to see exactly how much VDOT owns there, and I would like to talk about that. At the same time, it is a school board decision about the resource officers. And it is a town of Christiansburg issue on that aspect. But I would like to see us address it. Those kids are not in my district, but I think they're primarily in yours and Gary's Jim's district that go to Falling Branch. But if I was a parent there would be some issues. And part of it is because I am a little bit tainted because, 19 years of doing criminal defense work, for whatever reason, some of the severe mentally ill individuals sometimes utilize the bus systems to be moving around the country. And that's just been my experience. And so they're being let off right across from the school. And if I was a parent there, and I know primarily those people are just wanting to use the bathroom, but for whatever reason, they're becoming belligerent. Some of them are getting the police called on them. And if we could utilize that, and the parking lot is overcrowded. It's so successful, it doesn't fit on that space anymore. So if we could look at trying to cooperate with all of those entities, I'd like to see us work towards that.
I'm happy to do that, but again, I mean, this is something that needs to be worked out with VDOT, and we can do what we can do, but we don't really have a seat at the table in this discussion. If there's land that we can offer something like that, for land swap, then that's another thing. But if you're talking about moving VDOT land to VDOT land, then I don't see how, this is something, again, that Town of Christiansburg and School Board and VDOT need to work out.
Well, as I understand, we paid for the little stand that's there. I may be wrong. We transferred it down there. So we do have some investment. And here's the other thing. And maybe VDOT's got some more money. And I know that from the transportation plan that they are. But just saying, okay, it's a VDOT problem. They've got to do something. And we know that it is also, it's a combination, and all of our citizens are utilizing that parking lot. It's not just down at Christiansburg, and it's overflowing. Maybe we can work together to try to address it. Do I believe it's our issue? No. Ours alone? No. But maybe we can work together.
Well, let me clarify a little bit about what went on in the meeting we had several weeks ago, and correct me if I'm wrong, but we had a discussion that it should be all entities involved, including the transportation, Blacksburg Transportation.
And the MPO.
And the MPOs and,
involved as well.
Everybody, because it's a bigger than one issue. It might take a little contribution from each entity to get it done, okay? The more players you have, the cheaper it's going to be, number one.
But and if I can add to that, the one thing, because I serve as the chairman of the MPO too, the one thing the MPO has done is reached out to the Megabus people, the Smartway bus folks, and tried to evaluate alternative sites to pick some folks up to provide an immediate relief on that parking ride lot, because right now all the Smartway folks come there. That is the Megabus stop for Christiansburg. And in the meeting, there was some discussion about maybe moving the Megabus stop to another community, and we spoke up very quickly and said, no, that's a benefit to our community. We don't want to lose that, but maybe we need to relocate that. So there's a lot of players at the table in the discussion, to be sure, but back to Supervisor Gabriel, the responsibilities lie with the school, the town. I mean, and VDOT.
And what the Megabus people did say was they would make announcements when they stopped about, not going off that lot. And this was being made also by the Smart Bus people. So they're getting aware when they stop that, they shouldn't be going over to the school side. So that works as well as people listen, But the ideal thing would be, in my estimation, is to move it out of there and come up with another spot.
Wasn't it a fence added?
I know now.
The fence added, I would like to.
Fence added, they were talking about another part of the road they could move some cars on, but you got to get it out of that site.
I mean, since the fence has been added, I wonder whether anybody has been over that. Since the signage and the fence, it may have cured that particular problem, and it may not have.
Yeah, and VDOT was putting up much more signage, it's more visible too, with the fence. Yeah.
I remember when Chris started talking, Thank you, Chris, for doing your PowerPoint and for doing it ahead of time and giving us some opportunities to think about. And I think it speaks well for your concerns and your care about how our budgets and those things that we, after all, the budget sets the priorities. And so I want to thank you for that. I knew it was something that was important, but I couldn't remember. And you can have the powwow back.
Oh, I thank you. I don't want to face my brother without his power.
I got to see this picture of you in that
There's
book.
3 of them in there.
You
Okay,
wanna
make
see
sure
my
I see it.
picture? I'll show it to you.
162. I was trying to remember the
All
other page.
right.
Do you remember how old I was in 1978?
No,
The only
I
thing-
don't. I'm a gentleman.
Thank you.
The only thing I have to report is we are having a Route 8 meeting tomorrow. And anybody who's interested in coming, especially people who may see this in the audience. And there's going to be one on 460 Wednesday night.
I think so, and I apologize for not mentioning it. I was just sitting here looking at that. I didn't receive any additional information from VDOT on
I
that.
got something today.
Steve Sandy
Just
sent
emailed
it
us,
out.
yeah.
And it's a follow-up meeting on the Route 8 corridor tomorrow night at the Reiner Fire Department from 5 to 7. And then a follow-up on the Route 11 460 corridor at the Elliston Fire Department on Wednesday, the 10th.
Okay, and I just have one more item. Tomorrow, at 10 o'clock in the morning, I am meeting with VDOT and the Dirt Crew people and the MPO, Mr. Brew, and we're going to discuss how this project may or may not move forward. So, but it's going to be something that I hope it works. But if not, it'll be done. So, and I really have nothing else. So, if nobody has anything else, I move we adjourn.
Good meeting.